to talking. So hi, thank you for coming on, Meg. I really appreciate it. So tell people who don't know you a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Scarlett. I love Mom's Liberty and I love all the things that you do. So, yeah, I would describe myself as a normie mom, was just raising my kids, working and, living life. And then 2020 hit. I'm from Pennsylvania. So Rachel Levin was our director of health in Pennsylvania during COVID. So we got a front row seat to all of that before the nation. And basically what happened in the summer of 2020, Rachel Levin was saying, hey, you can't, I had a business at the time, you can't run your business, your kids can't go to school, you need to wear a mask outside in 95 degrees in the middle of July. And I'm like, none of this makes sense. So I got involved at a grassroots level in a movement to open schools, probably like many in Moms for Liberty, was
Yeah.
just like, what's going on? I have to do something. And through that, I started doing FOIA requests, public records requests. Make a long story short, after about 2 years of requests to my local government, I wanted to understand why we actually had a health director who was advocating for kids to be in school in the summer of 2020. And I wanted to know why no one was listening to him. And that ultimately led to me being sued 5 times by by my local government over public records. And then kind of once COVID died down, someone had brought to my attention, a dad in another school district that I met. All the moms listening know when you're
Yes.
doing this, you make friends throughout your county and other districts, and you're kind of helping each other figure things out. And a dad was like, hey, I think the gender clinic in Philadelphia is trying to train our teachers and train our schools to have these quote unquote affirming classrooms. Do you think you could FOIA something about this? I'm like, well, that sounds really crazy. Let me start FOIAing that. And at that point, I didn't really know, I knew very little about gender ideology, about what was happening in children's
What year was
hospitals.
that? Was that
That
2022?
was fall 2022. Yeah. It was the fall of 2022 because I had kind of, at that point, that's when I had gotten sued by my government. So I had reached the point of what I was trying to look for with FOIAs. And I remember this dad brought this to my attention and I started digging into all the transgender stuff. And I told my husband, I'm like, I think I need to submit some FOIA requests about this. He was like, please don't. He's like, you've spent 2 years doing this. You don't need to do it anymore. He's like, just
But you need
stop.
to practice with FOIAs because you're really good at you're the go-to person. I know that in 2020 I had never submitted a FOIA in my life, and the first ones that I did, I think I had 2 pages of requests. I thought,
Yes.
until you learn, like they're not going to answer that, and then
Mhm.
you have to refine it and but at first I thought, oh, I just want all of this and just give it
Mhm.
to me. And then
Mhm.
you realize there's a process to it and it takes
Mhm.
time. You have to, kind of sort out what you want and then ask more and more and more based on what you get. But
Mhm.
you've become like an expert at this. So what happened?
Yeah, well, I submitted a lot of FOIAs. I got same as you. The first few, I think it took me like 3 to 6 months to actually get one back because the ones I was submitting were just so incorrect and bad and way too broad. But a friend helped me learn how to kind of narrow it down, like you're saying. And so after I had kind of done these FOIAs about COVID, I realized that Rachel Levin I started looking up what was going on with the gender clinic. And there were a lot of ties to Rachel Levin, who had been in Pennsylvania government from 2015 to 2021. So I'm like, let me see, I need to understand like how was all of these trainings and all of these things pushing gender ideology, how are they pushed into the schools and into government? And so I started uncovering some pretty, I would say upsetting emails from Rachel Levin. I think the first one that went viral was from 2017, where Rachel Levin reached out to the senior members of the Philadelphia Children's Hospital Gender Clinic, asking for if there was any scientific literature basically about cutting children's body parts off. And the answer was like, in an email, was like, not really, but I know I'm summarizing, but not really, but we know it's happening. And so that I put that on Twitter. At the time, I wasn't really even on Twitter or social media all that much, other than other than locally. And it just started getting a lot of traction. So I kept FOIAing Rachel Levin and kept listening to all these webinars and learning more about gender ideology. And eventually, those things kept going viral. And that's how I ended up working at the Daily Caller News Foundation. Was someone was like, hey, maybe you can come do some FOIAs for us. And that's how all that happened.
I want to show, I've been looking, so I found it. I'm going to share screen. Hold on. Here is one. So on your account. So here, breaking: UK Supreme Court confirms Rachel Levine is a man. Kind of funny, but so everyone, like, so your posts on Rachel Levine were the first experience I had with your account. And you would put, you had so many details, and me reposting something you shared and then adding my own comment was the first time Jordan Peterson reposted me and then followed me. So I was like, I was like, oh my gosh. And I could look it up, but I forgot exactly what I said, but this was 2022, and it was something along the lines of like, Rachel Levine had taken a position in the Biden administration and was pushing, radical gender ideology and affirming care on kids in America. And this was being funded with federal tax dollars and supported by the federal government. And that was just unacceptable to me.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, I think the federal playbook, I've said this to people, that was run by the Biden administration with Rachel Levin at the helm, really happened in Pennsylvania between like 2015 till Rachel Levin left in 2021. And I have like a lot of documentation about how a lot of it was kind of these grants, like they were mental health grants that would then sponsor these gender ideology trainings for teachers or for therapists. And I think like even with the article about the GSA clubs, I mean, I think there's so much money that's directed towards ideology, towards gender ideology, whether, or has been in the past 10, 15 years, whether it's through a local, very local. I mean, I've done FOIAs where very local, like county government up to the federal level. And a lot of it is with these trainings and education and just really kind of molding institutions and molding thought within institutions to affirm this terrible, terrible lie that a child can change their sex. And, eventually at some point that became the standard for what people in academia and medicine believed. And that really, then we've seen the impact that's had across the country.
Here's one.
Every one of us can play a role in creating a welcoming workplace. Every one of you can make a difference in improving the feelings of inclusion for your coworkers. Thank you for helping make HHS such a welcoming and affirming workplace. And the gender identity, non-discrimination, and inclusion guidance is very important. And all supervisors and managers are responsible for helping to ensure it is fully implemented across all of the optives and staff divs.
So the point here was that tolerance was gone. You couldn't just be tolerant or accepting. You had to celebrate. And those were some of the clips that you posted, that we have to celebrate now. We have to participate. And then we have to offer up our children to this ideology. So it starts with tolerance. And Charlie Kirk actually said this. It starts off with tolerance, acceptance. And then it goes to you celebrate. Now you have to celebrate. You can't just tolerate, you have to celebrate. And then you have to participate, and your children have to participate. And if you're not participating, you can't just be like, hey, you do you, because that's what a lot of our attitude was. Like, grown adults do what they want. They're not, as long as they're not imposing it on me, and certainly not on my children. But that wasn't enough. Tolerance is never enough with woke radicalism, because it's underlying Marxism, and Marxism is totalitarian at the end of the day. And so you really were at the forefront of exposing Rachel Levine, because you had your lifelong lived in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia. So you knew firsthand what was going to happen. And it was interesting to note that in speeches, Rachel, I don't know what his real name is.
Richard.
Richard said how glad he was they had children.
Yeah, that was a clip I found in my kitchen. I would listen. I would just say to encourage all the other moms, if you think like, I mean, we were talking before this started, how as moms, we're just always balancing and juggling things. And I mean, I remember I was listening to these videos, these old clips on double speed, and I was in my kitchen cooking dinner, listening to this, and I heard that. I thought, oh my gosh, that is something that people need to understand. Here is someone who's advocating for children to have procedures that are going to potentially inhibit them from ever having children, saying they're glad that they had children before they went down that pathway. I mean, there's no cohesion to that. That's not a cohesive worldview. That's a very, very sad worldview. And it's really, I mean, that's sad.
The thing about Rachel, whoever, like, that was most offensive to me is that this is a man, an obvious man, grew out hair, put on lipstick, and has a slightly altered voice. But demanding to be called a woman, treated like a woman, respected like a woman, thought of as a woman, receiving awards that were traditionally given to biological women, it was so offensive to me. When I first started to get involved, and it still offends me now, that woman face, is offensive. It should be offensive. If as an adult, if you would like to dress like a woman and put on lipstick, whatever, and you're going about your day, okay. But then to say, I want to go into women's spaces and I demand that you use the she, her pronouns, and I demand that you think of me as you would any other woman. And if you don't, like in Colorado, you could be fined and, have misdemeanor charges thrown your way because you're not affirming their delusion, or their reality has to become my reality. If he thinks he's the Queen of England, does he get to walk into Buckingham Palace and say, hey, this is my reality? If my reality is that I am a 14-year-old girl, do I get to go back to high school? And I mean,
it's a Pandora's box for sure, Scarlett. There's a lot of rabbit holes, a lot of roads that leads to. That I don't know. I don't know how you answer those questions.
No, they don't. And when you ask those questions, they laugh at you like, oh, you're just being crazy. Until 2 years ago, when I talked about neo-pronouns and identifying as a rock, I said that when I was testifying and laughed at. And fast forward 2 years later, and Wisconsin Department of Instruction has a GSAFE instructor. They're basically saying, yeah, there's infinite identities. Now there's these new neo-pronouns, where kids can be so creative with their pronouns or their gender expression. It's limitless. And when you look up the Human Rights Campaign or GLSEN neo-pronouns guidelines, I mean, it's rock, self, cat, furry, whatever, all of this, it's all right there. So it's, at first they laugh at you and they tell you it's not happening and you're just creating boogeymen. And then they get mad at you. And then finally they say, yes, it's true. You bigot, accept it, or you're canceled. And that's always the way. So when my advice, if you find something and just put it out there, because they may laugh at you at first, but I promise you it won't be long before you have the facts. And in fact, the people that were telling you were lying end up saying, oh yeah, it's all true. And you bigot, how dare you not agree that a kid can be a rock? Call me tree. There's a book for 3-year-olds, Call Me Tree, because it's a kid that identifies as a tree and it's so beautiful.
I think what's so sad about that is that, especially for kids, it's like, you think about your kids and you think about how much you love them and about how unique they are. When you get to know your kids as they grow, you're learning more about their personality, their giftings, all these unique things, and that every child, every person, every individual is unique. And rather than celebrating the beauty in that, it's telling children that rather than cultivating who they are, trying to become something they can never actually become, because a kid can never be a rock, a man can never be a woman can never be a man, and it's this impossible dream, or I think delusion probably is a fairer word, and that's just so sad, because everybody has something to offer and something unique to bring to the world, and it's sad that we're trying to squelch that light rather than help it shine brighter.
And I would think that if a child is struggling so much that they would rather be an inanimate object than a human being, that clearly there are underlying issues. And we won't talk, in previous articles you have done, you have proved that that is exactly the case, that these are kids that have trauma, abuse. They might, or maybe they're autistic. But I think for the most part, it's trauma, abuse, they're suffering, and in that suffering, they want to be anyone but themselves. And we shouldn't affirm that. A good therapist, a good psychiatrist, a good medical team is going to work with hopefully parents that are involved, and they're going to say, okay, we're going to get to the root of this problem. That you can say, I love you. I love you no matter what. You are not a rock, or your boy, you're not a girl. You are you. You are special. You are unique. There's no one way to be you, and we're going to figure this out together. We're going to work on this, and really try and get that child the help that they really need. I mean, these are cries for help, and if you have kids, you know that, or if you've been a teacher, you know that. So instead of dealing with it in a way that's meaningful and real and that will cause hopefully some healing for a happy adult life, we're instead injecting kids with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, which will have an irreversible effect on these children. They will never be the same once they start the gender affirming regimen. And you have
I would say one thing too to add to that is the idea of socially transitioning, which is using a different name, a different pronoun. I mean, in the article we're going to discuss, there's a gender plan from a school district in California where they asked the child, well, what do you want to be called at school? And then what should we call you when we're talking to your parents? And that is a form of social transition. And there was something, I'm sure you're familiar with it, called the Cass Review, that was published in April of 2024 from England, from, oh my gosh, NHS, their NHS system. And to me, the most interesting part of the report is over 400 pages long, I believe. But there was a paragraph that talked about how socially transitioning a child, they didn't find evidence that it had any real benefit, but they did find evidence that kids who were socially transitioned were more likely to be medicalized. And I think that is so important, particularly when you're talking about education in schools, to realize that calling a child by a different sex or a different name, or encouraging them to look like a different sex, this social transition isn't benign, that it's absolutely leading and making kids more likely to go on puberty blockers, to get hormone therapy, to maybe even the next step is surgery, and to do these things that are really harmful to the body.
And the statistics are really high that once social transitioning starts, the next step, puberty blockers, it's really high. I don't know that exact number, but it is very high that once the social transitioning begins, it inevitably leads to puberty blockers. And then the next step, cross-sex hormones. And then the next step, you have surgeries on your, double mastectomies, facial, different kinds of surgeries to try to look more like the sex that you, they would say that you were assigned at birth, that if you want to look something different, which, sex isn't assigned at birth, that is a biological reality. But so to get in, and we'll talk about your article, because this is all about the social transitioning and the social transitioning that's happening in schools. And I think not enough parents understand how young this is, how young the age of the children that are getting involved in this, because it's in elementary schools now. I think to think that the GSA, the Gender Sexuality Alliance clubs, the Rainbow clubs, are for high school is wrong. And they are not gay, straight alliance clubs anymore. That has been changed. So I'll let you talk more about your article.
Yeah, so this was about the Genders and Sexuality Alliance clubs at the Oakland School District in California. And just I'll say to your point, these GSA clubs, which were middle and high school, but then this school district has something called a Rainbow Club. That was I included a piece of that in the article. That was for elementary school age kids. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I've read a lot of documents over the past 3 years on this issue, and I've seen time and time again different gender clinics or different LGBTQ groups referring to kids being potentially quote unquote transgender as young as age 3. So you're totally right that there isn't a bottom limit for how this ideology is pushed on kids. But in this article, what I found was there was an HIV STD prevention grant. So that was a grant from the federal government that was funding a program intended to decrease HIV STDs amongst middle school and high schoolers. And I submitted a public records request and asked for the grant application. And within that, found that they were actually using some of that money, a small piece of, not a huge amount, but still, like I think it was about almost $60,000 to fund GSA clubs. Like you mentioned, GSA clubs used to be the Gay Straight Alliance, which was meant to be peer support for gay kids, that they changed their name in 2016 to the Genders and Sexualities Alliance to really show that they had shifted their mission, which they're very clear about. It says it on their website. I have a quote in the article where they say, we're not really just a safe space for LGBTQ kids anymore. We're really training kids to be engaged in social change and activism. And that's very clear on the website. So I think it's pretty big deal that federal grant dollars are going towards funding these clubs in a local school district.
So I have on the screen slides, the gender identity and expression. And so explain these slides. How did you?
So I had asked for, I forget exactly what I asked for, but I had gotten the grant back, and I had also gotten a couple of the resources that the school had created for questioning students. And so one of the resources had an attachment to this slideshow, which actually was, I forget who it was created by, but it actually talks about different ways that a teacher could express, the gender unicorn, or talk about gender identity. It's specifically
guidance.
What was that?
Was it guidance for the teacher, like kind of, supplemental material?
Yeah, there was a resource, which I think I linked into the article, that was all about different things for transgender kids. And then it had the top links to different slideshows. So this was like I think the title was a mini presentation on gender identity. So the grant funded someone called an LGBTQ liaison at these schools. And in the description, the LGBTQ liaisons, what they did was they oversaw the school's GSA clubs, but they also helped create LGBTQ affirming programming within the school. I think it specifically had mentioned they would do like a school-wide presentation. So I don't know exactly what these presentations were used for, but they were part of the resources that the school was using for teachers and students.
So in one slide that I have up, this is a book Who Am I? This is not a middle school book. This is a elementary school book. Mm-hmm. And I have seen slide presentations like this, and I'm going to go back one. The colors, pink, blue. This is meant for K through 5 grade students. I've seen similar presentations like these in Wisconsin and in other states, and you can tell, like rubber duckies. There are presentations that Advocates for Youth will use for teens, and they look very different. They're going to be a little bit more, they're going to be older. They're going to have some older books. They're going to have more videos. These that are for the kids, they'll have a children's book, and you can see in this slide, like, what does it mean to identify? And they're talking about, sex, girl, boy, non-binary, Black, multiracial, Chinese. So again, getting kids to think of themselves as through the lens, like critical race theory, see themselves through the lens of identity. Mm-hmm. And then, so what does it mean to be non-binary? And what is binary? Boy, girl. But there's so many options. Gender queer. Again, gender queer, my gender is fluid. It can change every day. the fluidity of gender identity. And you can hear sus, but not cis, just, and then you can see a YouTube, there's going to be someone who's an influencer, has YouTube videos. Rebecca Sugar, she, her, they, them, right there. And going on. Again, look at it. This is, let's talk about pronouns. The way that it'd be like, let's talk about adjectives. Now it's z, zer, zers, zer self. C, her, HIR, hers, herself. And then it's a little bit more on pronouns here. And I guarantee you, if this had a link and I could click it, you would start to get into the neo pronouns and the multitude of gender expressions that children, and here it says everyone has a choice with their pronouns. They'll also say try on new pronouns, change them every day. They are talking to 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. And they're doing this. Are they getting, do you know, are they letting parents know that this presentation is going to be shown in class?
I don't know how this presentation was used. I mean, I do know there is the gender support plan that I got, and it was like a 5-page document that staff would fill out if a child decided they had a new identity. And so on this gender support plan, it was pretty clear that parents were not going to be contacted until the child decided they were ready. I mean, in the plan, one of the things that was just really blatantly obvious and was kind of crazy was that they asked the child to list their pronouns and name they want to use at school, but then at the end of the document it talks about, well, what do you want us to use when we talk to your mom and dad or talk to your guardians? And I mean, this is something that we talked about FOIA at the beginning of the talk here, but anyone in their school district could ask, do you have a gender support plan template? Can you send it to me? Because I think probably a lot of schools have them, more schools than you realize. I mean, this is California, and I think for a long time people will be like, oh, it's California, but it's pretty clear now that this ideology is in every state across the country. So, I mean, that's a really simple thing you could do is ask your school district, hey, do you have a gender support plan template? Can I see that document? And that's something they should be able to give you.
Yeah, so right on the screen right now for everyone to see is one of the last pages of the gender support plan. And it says, if the student's name cannot be modified in the above systems, please inform the student that their former name will still appear on the official school records. And all of this is what should we use when we talk to your parents? They're asking them, basically meaning, can we use the name you use at school? Can we use that name when we call your parents at home? Oh, no? Okay, that's fine. We won't do that. We'll keep that secret. And that's what it means. And to your point, I'm adding to the stage. This is Wisconsin. And GSAFE is the group in Wisconsin, which is the go-to, and that's on their website. We are the go-to group for the Wisconsin Department of Instruction when doing training for staff on GSA clubs, these Gender Sexuality Alliance clubs, or LGBTQ plus affirmation training, belonging, DEI. I know they're changing it now to belonging, but they also write curriculum for schools. They do a lot of things for schools, and this is Wisconsin. So do not think, and where the teacher who sent this to me, this was not a radical far left school district. Okay, there are school districts like in Elkhorn, in the various areas. Kettle Moraine used to be one. Now that school board has a sane majority. But in 2020, 2021, this was flying under the radar. Parents didn't know. And a lot of school districts that you would not think you wouldn't characterize them now as woke, they had been infiltrated. So what you're showing here, like this is in Wisconsin, this is in Florida, this is in red states, it's in blue states. Now, with this new administration, you have a better chance in a red state to get rid of it, but it's everywhere, so you need to be vigilant.
I think too, I know you'd recently had Kelly on or someone had Kelly on for talking about comprehensive sex education. I mean, that's another buzzword. If you see that in your school district, there's a lot of overlap between all of these affirming schools and then what's being taught in comprehensive sex education, because that is a type of sex ed that normalizes gender ideology and transgenderism, and it starts in kindergarten. So they're starting very, very young for children and teaching them that all of these things that it's good, that if someone, if a little girl thinks she's a boy, you need to be kind and affirming and tolerant and accepting of her. And so they're learning this so young. It's also a really important thing that I don't think enough people realize is happening. And again, it's happening everywhere.
Yes, and you'll see it as human growth and development. Usually state statute will cover that. It'll still call it human growth and development, but it is not the sex ed or the human growth and development that you had when you were a kid.
Mhm.
And comprehensive sex ed means, it's just like what you said, it starts in kindergarten. And the subtle things, I remember when I was first volunteering in one of my younger daughter's classrooms, and I noticed that the teachers were saying friends, like friends, gather, friends, and not boys and girls.
Mhm.
And I thought about it briefly. I didn't ask. I just thought, oh, that must be some new lingo. What I didn't realize is it stemmed even way back then. This must have been 2016, 2017. Starting to use language like friends, they were starting to de-sex language already.
Mhm.
We're going to start by saying friends. We don't say mom and dad, we'll say, instead of wife, husband, partners.
Mhm.
You're to basically changing language, which is
Mhm.
what deconstructionists do, and postmodernism and all of that.
Mhm.
But, and I have the slide up where they finally get to what does transgender mean, and then they have famous people that identify as transgender, and then they talk about gender expression, and this is where don't be fooled,
Mhm.
because they'll say, well, yeah, there's identifying as a rock. Well, no, that's not a trans identity, but what it is what they call a gender expression. It's an expression of your gender identity, and you can express yourself any way that you like, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Again, there's no parameters, there's no boundaries for kids. And I talked about this earlier. Meg is a mom, and as someone with a background, you have a very diverse background. You've traveled the world. You have a background in medicine. What happens when you remove boundaries on children, young children? You just strip all boundaries away.
Well, you're not making them feel safe and secure. That's for sure. You're making them more vulnerable to someone with predatory intentions. I'd also say with the gender expression, I mean, I think something that I think is really important for people to understand is that the word gender and gender identity are used as synonyms by transgender activists. And so all of gender ideology is really based on this idea that you have a sex that is separate from your gender identity. And gender identity is just basically a feeling, it's a thought. I don't really know how you would describe it, but it's this disassociated view of human beings that who you are can be completely separate from your body. I mean, that's basically what they're saying. And so
Yeah.
when you see people, I mean, I don't like to even use the word gender anymore.
No.
I think gender is something that was a linguistic term. It's not a standalone construct, and it basically means the same thing as gender identity. If you think about it, if you ask someone to give a definition of what is gender, ask them to do that without referring to the sexes. You can't, unless you're a trans activist. You can't, because all gender has done typically is describe patterns, stereotypes, or even just use the nature of the sexes. It was a secondary term, but the gender ideologues made it a primary standalone thing. So that is what made all of this possible, because now if you have a quote unquote gender identity and it's real, and it's just as real as your sex, well, then you can have that incongruence. So all of this to say, the idea of what is gender is that it is those external stereotypes. So it goes all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, where if a man puts on lipstick and high heels, what is he doing? He's saying he's expressing a new gender identity. All he's doing is fulfilling external stereotypes.
Yes.
And why it is so offensive as a woman is that we are holistically women, body, mind, and soul. And there's a mystery to that. Like where our nature is female. Even if you read, there's a really interesting book called Your Brain on Birth Control that I didn't necessarily agree with the author's worldview, but she made a really interesting point about how hormonal birth control changes a woman's personality.
Wow.
And it was so fascinating being involved in this issue because it just made me think about how even at a hormonal level with our sex hormones impact our personality. So our biology and our personality are so closely linked. So all this to say, when you hear that word gender or gender identity, that just means an activist is saying being male or female is only meeting external stereotypes, because that's really all it is. All of sex change surgery, sex change medical interventions, they're all cosmetic. They're trying to make someone's body fulfill an external look, but you can never actually, you can't transform someone from male to female. It's one of those things. It's like the law of nature, the law of gravity, like the ball, when you drop, it's going to fall. If you're a man, you're a man. If you're a woman, you're a woman.
I feel like, is this a war on women, in the sense it's a war on femininity, or the things that actually make a woman so unique and wonderful, the things that we used to prize, like the fact that we are can have children, that we can give life, and that we are, when we have children, that we no matter, even if you're working, you tend to be that primary caregiver. Like you breastfeed, like you nourish, you comfort, you feel like your heart is walking outside of your body. Jordan Peterson talks a lot about just even the way our composition, the instincts that we have, that we've honed as human beings, as human females, adult human females, there's instincts that make us more attuned to taking care of infants. And to reject all of that, and not to say that there isn't a role that dads can't take care of infants or change diapers or any of that.
I mean, our bodies were literally made to nourish our babies.
Yes.
So there's like something you can't, it's not like there's something to that. It's pretty clear. I don't think you have to make a really big, like, hypothetical argument when you're like, yeah, newborns are actually supposed to feed from their moms as soon as they're born. And there's all this hormonal, I mean, as a nurse, I've always been so fascinated by that, you know?
Everything that the milk it provides these essential things that your infant needs, that your body just sort of knows what to do. And when I was in college, I was in a child psychology class, and I'll never forget this. The professor said, for everyone, and there was 400 people in the class, imagine you're holding an infant, pick up the infant and burp your baby, hold your baby. And, I had not had children. I instinctively, over my left, and you start to pat, and he said, look around. All of the women will have the infant on their left side and all of the men on their right side. Women, heartbeat. You instinctively are bringing that baby by your heart and to soothe. And the majority of us had never had children. And I was like, wow. And it was true. All the men on the right, all the women on the left. And he was just making the point of, which he probably would be fired now if he were to do that demonstration in class.
Right.
And it was like, wow, and that was the first of what we learned about the differences between men and women psychologically, and the way that we raise children and how that impacts children, child psychiatry, psychology. And instead of appreciating those differences and understanding, I love Star Wars. We were talking about how much I love Disney, the force, the yin and yang, how we balance, how we need to have balance. All of that is thrown asunder when you say being a woman is just putting on lipstick, growing your hair out. That's all it is. There's nothing to it. Being a man is, fashion a phallus out of your arm and give your, grow a beard, and you're a man. And I don't want to take from what it takes to be a man. Like why men have testosterone, like why, how dangerous of a world it can be if we don't have, we do need to have strong men, and we do need to have strong women, but balance. Like you don't look at the oppressive patriarchy and the fact that women couldn't vote, all of those terrible things, and think, well, let's just destroy men because it'd be so much better, if it's all, if, the divine feminine. No, it's about finding that balance. And whenever you have that balance, and then society will be, I think, better for it. You'll have a better family. You'll be happy. But telling women a lie, telling young girls a lie, that you don't need to have children, sterilize yourself, and tell boys the same thing. You don't need to have children. Like sterilize yourself. Like give in. And when you're talking about the W path,
yeah, I was gonna say one of the most disturbing clips I've watched a lot of videos on gender ideology, on gender medicine. Read a lot of things. One of the most disturbing ones I've ever read was for an article series we did last May on WPATH, which, if your listeners aren't familiar with, is really probably the most influential transgender health organization in the world. They're very influential in law, in insurance coverage, in medicine, and we'd obtained a bunch of videos through a FOIA request of a private meeting event they'd had, and this one doctor was saying about how instructing the other doctors that they needed to be careful with the timing of puberty blockers for 11-year-old boys, because if they did it too early, the boys wouldn't have enough genital tissue to surgically create a fake vagina down the road. And it's saying that in like very explicitly. I mean, I'm sorry to be explicit, but I don't know how else to say it.
You're saying it in the gentlest way possible.
But it's quite disturbing, because I think I have a son who's 11, and I could cry thinking about talking about him in that way, or thinking about him in that way. It's like our children deserve to grow up whole, and just to comment on what you just said about
never experience sex.
No, I mean, they don't
missy ever.
Yeah, there's so many issues. I mean, the genital surgeries, I won't go into it, but the complication rates are extremely high. And I come from being a nurse. I was an ICU nurse, and so I know one of the things is that at the bedside every single day with our patients, we'd have a discussion with like 15, 20 people, determining the risks and benefits of every single procedure we did. Even things that are simple, like something like putting a catheter in someone, like to drain their urine, right? That's like pretty benign. I mean, there's a risk. There's a risk of infection. There's things. So you talk about it. So it's just absolutely insane to me that you have doctors who will perform these very, very high risk surgeries that are removing function. When you obliterate someone's genitals, you're removing function, and you're also removing really critical function. Like, one of the reasons people who have phalloplasties, which is the creation of the fake penis, need so many revision surgeries is because they get stenosis, ureter stenosis, which means that the ureters harden and they can't excrete urine. And like, you have to be able to do that or you die. Like, if your body, that's why people who can't do that go on dialysis 3 days a week, because it's so important. Your kidneys play such a critical role in regulating and achieving homeostasis in your body. So you think about, we're doing these procedures based on this lie that you can change your sex. And these procedures have huge complication rates, rather than, to what you're saying, to celebrate the uniqueness and beauty that we all have, that we all bring to the world. I think that one of the things we've gone wrong in society is that we think different means better or worse. And different just means different. And I love, like I did, you mentioned I traveled. I mean, I got to travel a bit in my 20s, and I just loved meeting people with different backgrounds or different cultures or a different point of view, because it's so fascinating to hear someone else's perspective. And you realize, like, there are a lot of things that we have in common. There's a lot of things that are different, and that those differences aren't something to be ashamed about, or it's not a stance on equality. It's actually really beautiful, because if we were all the same, the world would be super boring. So yeah.
And I don't talk about this a lot, because I can be a target, and I don't want, but my family is in medicine pretty extensively. I have a son who just graduated medical school. I have a daughter who's in nursing school. Nurses, surgeons, different. And so I talk a lot with people in the medical community, and they won't go on record for anything, but we will see, like, for example, there was a school board meeting that I aired in Naperville, Illinois, and they had one person who's like an MD come out there, and I think one nurse say, "Oh, gender affirming care, it's great, it's proven science, all of this." And what can be hard is, I know almost no one agrees with them. They really don't. Even if they're going to go along, even if I'm not saying that they're right wing, or that they don't vote differently than I do, but they do not agree. I have asked many, do you think there's ever a case to put a child on puberty blockers? And it's no. They're like, no. They're like, they think it's like witch doctor kind of stuff. They're like, it's not approved by the FDA. They're like, there's a million complications. They would never, they wouldn't touch endocrinology with a 10-foot pole. They want nothing to do with it. They don't want it. They don't want to take these clients. It's way too, but then at the end, they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to say it out loud. In medicine, the majority would not have their own child, they would not want this for their own child. And they don't agree with it, but they don't say anything. So the few that do stand up, the few woke activists who are also doctors and nurses, or probably have someone in their life, maybe their child, maybe somebody that is identifying as trans, so now they feel like they have a thesis that they need to prove right, rather than, what you're supposed to do with a thesis as a nurse. You're supposed to attack the thesis and try and prove it wrong. You're supposed to do everything you can until there's no other choice but to say, okay, this works, because we've thrown everything at this concept, this thesis. And when it comes to this affirming care for minors, they have established that this is the science, and don't you dare try and prove it wrong. Don't you dare. We can only prove it right. You have to prove it right. It works against the way that we do science, what is reasonable and rational. And it's hard to understand the medical community, and that they're not vocal enough on this issue. It's hard. It's hard for me, and I wish that more people in medicine would be vocal, because as somebody who has to go testify and talk about these issues, it's like, well, you're not a doctor. Okay, yeah, I'm not, but I can read, and I'm a mother. Then you bring one doctor, and they'll say, well, you're not an endocrinologist. It's always something. And then we brought endocrinologists, and they're like, well, you're a mega, so we don't have to. Right. They're always going to try and find.
Well, I think because I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I was talking to someone about this yesterday, about how I think when this really is going to end is when the medical consensus ends. There was just a report from the Trump administration where they talked about that. They talked about how it's all junk science. I mean, that's what the Trump administration has called it in executive orders, and it's really a good label for it. But so much of it is medical consensus. And I think another part is something that I've researched and written about, is how a lot of these huge organizations with thousands of people will have a very small committee that's kind of like the LGBTQ committee, and they're really steering the ship in terms of the gender ideology activism. But yeah, I think what was that?
Is that the case with pediatrics, like the association that runs?
I mean, I think if you just start Googling like amicus briefs for some of the state laws that were banning the pediatric sex change, you'll find that amicus briefs with 20, 24 different medical organizations, all listing that that kids need access to puberty blockers, they need access to surgeries, they need access to all of these things. And so it does make it difficult because it's this consensus, even if the science isn't there. So I think you're right that, I mean, there's so many layers to all of this. I mean, another layer is you think
pediatrics, a small group decides.
Well, I did a story on the American Academy of Pediatrics where I had found, done a bunch of FOIA requests where I found that it was a really small group, just 4 pediatricians that were asked to review the WPATH standards of care on behalf of the AAP. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with the WPATH standards of care, but that's like the document that really drives a lot of the recommendations for insurance coverage for practitioners. And so there was a big scandal over the last summer because there were documents that came out through discovery in a legal case that Rachel Levin and the Biden administration were pressuring WPATH to remove the lower age limit. So basically, WPATH was allegedly going to have some lower age limits to say like, okay, maybe, a child at this age should not be eligible for surgery yet. And then Rachel Levin and the Biden administration pressured them to remove those. And then the American Academy of Pediatrics further pressured them to remove those. And in the one brief that was written by AG Marshall in this legal case, says it was the AAP who quote unquote tipped the scales and got WPATH to change their guidance. And so that's just a really interesting, I mean, I wrote a really long article where I have all the emails that I had obtained and all the went through all the emails that had been exposed in this Boe versus Marshall case. And I mean, I think it's quite fascinating to see how it all works and how it really is medical consensus. And that's been stated by the Trump administration, by the Cass review. I mean, all kind of the same thing. That's very circular. And I think you don't need a medical degree to understand, like,
No.
I mean, I just think about if you just were to take out the words like sex change or all of this and just say, ask someone, do you think it's okay to give a healthy, a 12-year-old girl who's physically healthy medical interventions that are going to cause her to lose her fertility and never be a mother? I think, most people, and honestly, we know most people agree with this because of the results of the last election. That was a huge issue for people.
Yes.
So I hope that we need more doctors and nurses. I think it's hard because especially if you're in like a very blue state, the medical board might be, the medical boards that give out licensing are different from state to state, but a lot of them are appointed by the governor. And so, for example, I'm from Pennsylvania. I did a piece last August about how the governor's office and activists had pressured the state boards of nursing, of medicine, to adopt a policy that allows them to penalize any professional who engages in quote unquote conversion therapy, which they would define as if a girl's struggling and thinks she's a boy and you're trying to help her deal with the trauma and you say, no, you're a little girl, that's conversion therapy. But they explicitly state that giving someone medical interventions to make them look like the other sex is not conversion therapy, which, I mean, I don't know how you square that.
That's a big issue in Wisconsin because we do have a GOP majority in the Assembly and Senate. So the governor, who's a Democrat and very woke, have not been able to pass a ban on conversion therapy. And they always try and make Republicans look like, oh, you want to go back to the old days of kids can't be gay. It has nothing to do with that. It's what they term conversion therapy is you can't have a priest or a pastor talk to a kid who says they are non-binary or identifying as a sex other than their biological sex. You can't say, hey, let's wait, let's not affirm, let's talk about this. That's called conversion therapy. And doing such a thing could lose your license to practice in the state of Wisconsin. Right now, this topic is going before the Wisconsin Supreme Court because the governor unilaterally decided, I'm not even going to go through the legislator anymore. I'm just deciding that we're going to ban conversion therapy. So this is now an issue that's going in the courts. But again, it's not what what folks think that it is. It's that they don't want a therapist to be able to even question a young child when a young child says, you know, hey, I think that a little girl says, I think I'm a boy. When I've talked to therapists off the record, again, they've said what you should first establish is what's the family life, what's going on, is there abuse, is there trauma? You know, you don't assume, oh, transgender. The person I've talked to said that would be the easiest thing to do. The easiest thing to do would be slap a label on it. But the real work is finding out what's the underlying issue. But if you're being told by the state governing boards that you can't do that, and that you just have to affirm and pass that kid along, well, now that kid is on this conveyor belt, this gender affirming conveyor belt, and all the real issues, the fact that that girl might have been molested, and so she was disassociating from her body because of the abuse and trauma. Instead of dealing with that, we're going to do the easy thing and just like, they're pop-ins, let's give them some drugs and see what happens. It is it's medical malpractice that is so shocking because it's being performed on the most vulnerable children in our country. I hope that one day, I hope that there is a reckoning, a reckoning for what's happening.
I think that we're more and more people are realizing it, and it'll take time, but I think that we know that the truth of all of this is that men are men, women are women, and children can't change. You can't change your sex, adults or children. It's wrong to give children experimental, non-FDA approved treatments that result in them losing their sexual function and fertility.
Yes.
And I do think that it's amazing to see the progress that this issue's made. I mean, I think about people like Chloe Cole and how she's moved the ball on her story, and the other detransitioners, and just their absolutely heart-wrenching stories. But I think about their bravery and their courage and taking this vulnerability and these things that were huge mistakes and things that were done to them, and using that to help protect other kids. It's just so admirable and so courageous to use their pain to move the ball. And I think it's going to get there.
It is, and we should end with, like, on a good note. Yesterday, the big beautiful bill passed with language that defunds Planned Parenthood, and defunding, and Moms for Liberty as an organization was behind it, although we don't get involved directly in the abortion issue. Planned Parenthood is the #1 provider of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers to kids in some states. It is kind of their new cash cow because there are less people, the population has declined, and less abortions. And so now they will, and in Live Action did an undercover story, which they discovered that minors were able to obtain, talk to, a provider over the phone, telehealth, and within 30 minutes have a prescription for puberty blockers without parental knowledge or consent. And the reporter that was, pretending to be a 16-year-old girl said, my parents can't know. And they're like, oh yeah, we can make sure your parents don't find out. And that isn't free. So to that girl, if this was a real girl, the puberty blockers would seem free. No, they would submit those claims for reimbursement by Medicaid. So the federal government, our tax dollars, are paying for this. And Planned Parenthood is, I think they supply over 80% of K through 12 public schools with curriculum and resources for sex education, and, like we were talking about, comprehensive sexuality education. And this whole month, Moms for Liberty has been focused on comprehensive sexuality education, and we have exposed some pretty terrible things that Planned Parenthood is involved in, and things that they recommend to staff members to use in classrooms, the books, the curricula, the materials, the referrals to Planned Parenthood, all of that, how intricately linked these NGOs can be, these nonprofits can be. So that was good news that it passed the House with that language. Now it's going to the Senate, and let's hope that we can stop the Medicaid reimbursement to Planned Parenthood.
Absolutely, and to other hospitals as well. I mean, the Medicaid, there was a battle over that in Pennsylvania in 2017. There were state legislators who did not want to reimburse, re-up CHIP, which is the state health insurance, with the provision of that it was able to cover pediatric sex change, and ultimately they lost that battle. So yeah, I think that's fantastic I think that it's great the Trump administration is using whatever levers they can to stop this.
Yeah, whatever.
I think, there's still a lot of work to do state by state.
How long did it take to get here? A really long time. It's going to take, but at least starting, we've got people in charge, the CDC, HHS, all of these that aren't woke, and they're not on board with this, and they're trying to figure out ways to starve these programs. And Department of Education is certainly trying to rid DEI. I think the good news is, even if you're in a blue state, if you've got a conservative school district, if you have school board members that have been endorsed by Moms for Liberty, that have worked with Moms for Liberty, then you know that they have the tools in their toolbox to correct what's going wrong in your school district. And they are now, the federal government is on our side, and so a lot of these decisions are local. What you've uncovered in Oakland, I'll put that, it's local. These are local decisions. They can decide as a district, and as a school board, the school boards in that district can decide, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to follow federal law. They can make that decision, and many are. So that's the good news. The bad news is that many are not, and they are trying to use the judiciary. The woke are weaponizing the judiciary to try to stop the will of the vast majority. Over 70% of this country does not agree with any of this. And I think it would be more if they really knew what was going on.
Absolutely. Well, it's good. And go into Memorial Day weekend with the good news that hopefully our tax dollars are not going to be funding child sex change for much longer. Let's hope.
Yes, we have to, like my shirts, we have to fight like a mom.
Yeah.
Fight like a mom.
There's a lot of other things I think that we could probably spend the money on that would be better than that. So I think every step in the right direction, something's great.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks for coming on. Enjoy your Memorial Day. The best thing that everyone can do listening is actually tune out of social media over Memorial Day and spend time with your family, and make sure that you are instilling your values in your children, so that no matter what happens, if you try and get them in the best school that you can. So maybe they're not exposed to this, but somewhere they're going to be exposed to something like this. So have the conversations with your kids, instill your values, and just love them and spend time with them, and unplug from social media over this weekend. And as a social media manager, I maybe shouldn't tell you to do that, but
it's solid advice, Scarlett. We all need that. The real world is there's a lot of joy and beauty out in the real world. There's a lot of joy and beauty with your families, and those are the things we need to remember and celebrate. So
celebrate your family. Don't be angry all the time. If you feel that you're getting too angry, tune out for a little bit. That's the best thing that you can do. Well, Meg, thanks. I know we'll talk more later, and every time you have a story, we could do this, because you do good work. Oh, you hold on. You can't. I have to put the follow Meg on X right here, and you are a journalist for
the Daily Caller News Foundation. Yeah.
Yes, so support them. Follow Meg. She always has great insight, and she has done so many amazing, groundbreaking stories. And if you go to her X page and you find this most recent story, and I'll make sure I post it again, go through it, because click all the links. She has all the receipts there. Everything that we showed you and more are available. And then use that to FOIA your own school district and find out what's going on.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Meg.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, thanks, Scarlett. Bye.
Bye. remove you from. It was wonderful to have Meg on. She seriously, you need to follow her on. I still have it up. Meg, we barely scratched the surface of the report that she wrote. It was so good. I'm like, you have to be on. And again, so this is part of a gender support plan. FOIA, if you're in a if you have children in public school, this is what FOIA, do you have a gender support plan? If you do, I want to see it. These are things that they have to provide for you. If you're go into your child's school, elementary, middle, high school, if you see stuff like this on the doors, do a FOIA. FOIA, ask more. Also, go directly and talk to the teachers. And in order to have a sticker like this, that means that they have had to go through training with GLSEN, this organization. Type this in, and actually I could type that in really fast, and you'll see what I've talked about this a lot. If you follow me, I'm going to share this screen. Right here. So the first thing you're going to see, you can leave this website quickly, escape 3 times. Now this is so that children who have this on and they don't want their parents to know, click this 3 times and it clears the browser history. Or let's say you're at work and your school district is banning DEI. Well, you don't want the history of this, you click it 3 times and then it wipes your browser history. So safe space, if that sticker is on the door or in the classroom of your child's teacher or a staff member in your child's school, this is what it is. GLSEN plans to transform and relaunch amid attacks against LGBTQ+. They're not going anywhere. Our work. The work is to create activists in schools. And we've been talking about GSAs. Here you go. GSA clubs. Youth 14 to 19, Gender and Sexuality Alliances. Look at this image here. There's very young children here. These are elementary school students. So this is in elementary schools. Learn more. Starting a GSA at your school. Being an inclusive classroom. So this is all, Meg and I were talking, like, these are all the different transaction kits, guidelines, like tons that, all of the resources. The buttons. And the stickers. And then here, they'll have, I've seen this video before too. I'll run that video at some point. Safe Schools for All. So we have this in Wisconsin. Safe Schools Project. And you can see here the Biden administration. This is prior to when the Biden administration had released the new Title IX rule that had changed protection of women to protection of men who pretend to be women. And now, thankfully, under the Trump administration, the definition of woman is now a biological female, male, female, only gender has been removed, gender identity has been removed. But In schools, it is through non-discrimination policies that a lot of the more crazy things can enter. So I'm going to, again, here, now the action kit. So you can see there's a safe space kit usually of some sort, but
can do our best to send you a link to that via the chat, but we will not be doing a chat Q&A because we collected questions ahead of time during registration. So with that, I thank you all for joining us, and we're going to go ahead and get started with introductions. My name is Onyx Eva. I use they, them pronouns. I am the youth programs associate at GLSEN. And I will go ahead and pass it off to Lucia.
Hi all, my name is Lucia Salazar Davidson. I'm 18 and a freshman at Moore Park College. I use they or any pronouns, and I am the Freedom Fellow for the West region.
Thanks. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Lou, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm currently a senior in high school, and I'm a part of Glenton's National Student Council.
Thank you. Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda. I am a high school senior. My pronouns are she, her, and I am also a member of the GLSEN National Student Council.
Awesome. Ollie?
Hi, my name is Ollie. I'm a senior from Florida. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a represent from the Southern region in the National Student Council.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for joining us and sharing that little bit of information about yourselves. So the first question is, how did you initially get involved in a GSA, and what made you want to start or join one? And oh, sorry, I forgot about our wonderful educator who is a part of this panel. Christy, you are next. Please introduce yourself. Thank you.
It's okay. Hi, I'm Christy. She, her pronouns. I am a GSA sponsor and also a principal within my district. And I'm a GLSEN Educator Committee.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So our first question is, how did you initially get involved in a GSA, and what made you want to join or start one? And for me, I knew that I was sort of coming out into my identity as a queer person, figuring out who I was, what labels resonated with me, and I really wanted some queer friends in my life. I wasn't interested in activism yet when I was getting involved in a GSA, but I knew that I wanted a space to find other young LGBTQ+ people. And so I decided to start a GSA at my high school because I knew that GSAs were a great place to find social networks, but my high school didn't have one at the time when I was a freshman. So the search for friendship was really what brought me to a GSA. And we're going to switch up the order a little bit so we don't get too repetitive. Let's go with Amanda.
Again, I'm going to just keep playing this. This is an example, a good example of what happens when radicalizing children through these GSA clubs. So I think it's important to watch. So we'll just keep watching this.
Kind of had a similar experience. So I was like kind of coming into my identity as a queer person, and I knew what GSAs were, and I knew I was like in like 8th grade when I came out, and I knew that the high school I was going to had a GSA. So I was so excited to join a GSA, and it was amazing. And in my sophomore year, one of my advisors said, hey, you should run to be a GSA president. And I was like, what? And then I did, and I won. And it completely changed my life. I, really came into myself as like a leader and as a queer person. And now I'm with GLSEN and I do all these amazing things. I have all these great opportunities. So yeah, it was really great.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Mary.
Yeah, so actually a lot of my friends were saying that they want to start a GSA, but somehow that idea never got pulled through. So I was like, okay, I will start one. And actually the main event that triggered it was because there was like noticeably discrimination in my school towards queer students. And then I was like, okay, there need to be a space that is safe for queer students and for us to advocate for our rights.
Absolutely. Yeah, so hearing these different perspectives, GSAs are great for social environments, for advocacy, for leadership building. There are a lot of really different benefits to being in a GSA, and every GSA is different. So some may lean more toward being focused on social activities, some might lean more toward advocacy, but as a member of a GSA, you can do a lot of work to help shape your GSA to meet your needs, as well as the needs of other students. So now let's hear from Ollie.
Like the other people who have spoken, I definitely joined because at my middle school, we didn't have a GSA. I was essentially in all my classes the only queer person. So I wasn't anticipating any advocacy or activism at all. I just joined because I was really excited that my high school had a GSA, my middle school did not. I just wanted to make more queer friends with similar perspectives, identities, life experiences to me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Christy, what made you want to get involved with the GSA?
There was a teacher who previously was running the GSA and she retired, and I said, hey, I want this, like I want to be involved, and I also wanted to just do more with it and make it bigger and a little bit more organized, and knew that this was a space that I wanted to be involved and help students. So that's why I decided to get involved with it.
Awesome, thank you. And Lucia.
Yeah, like a lot of the other panelists have said, there was no GSA at my school when I got to high school. So I decided to start one because I was looking for a queer community. I was looking for queer friends, and the couple of people who I knew and I banded together and put our GSA together, so we would have a place to be together in that way.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. We're gonna talk more about the work that our GSAs do now. So the next question is, in what ways does your GSA make an impact on your community? Is it a social space? Do you engage in advocacy? Do you provide education? Is there something else that your GSA focuses on? So for this one, we'll start with Christy.
We really do all of these in all capacities, try to work with within this. But one of the things that we have done the most work in would be working with our local university and getting an opportunity to kind of work within college students also and create some involvement with them. And we've also gotten an opportunity to work with like our local mental health communities and our local shelters, and trying to make sure that we bring panelists and speakers to come talk with.
So again, to notice how much the GSA Club focuses on political advocacy, activism work. The goal, because they will say, oh, this is a club about love and belonging, and we're just getting to get, but so far from what I've heard, this is a great deal. It's about advocacy. It's about activism. It is about getting in, they'll say getting involved, great, getting involved, but getting involved in ways that are, again, to do activism, to become future activists, to become more political, to get involved in eventually like partisanship. And to me, the background of all this is to take these kids and turn them into the future activists that will drive and push agendas. And it's been working until recently. And that's the good news.
With our students. So we do probably work within all of those capacities.
Awesome, thank you. Ollie.
We do a little bit of everything in terms of providing a social space and advocacy. Specifically, when we have our meetings, we often do presentations on queer history and culture. Actually, this month for Black History Month, we're doing a bunch of presentations on prominent Black queer figures like Bayard Rustin, Gladys Bentley, so that, you know, queer students can be in an affirming place, you know, where their history, they know that their history matters and they can learn about themselves. And a lot of the advocacy work is about improving conditions specifically within the school. So we've had walkouts for the recent Don't Say Gay bills. We've done a lot of negotiating with staff in terms of helping trans students with like name changes and such, being middlemen.
So student walkouts, student protests, helping with student name changes, helping to, again, in a lot of the controversy around gender support plans revolves around the fact that parents aren't notified, and that when parents express wishes that their child is not addressed by a different name, that they are not affirming, that those wishes are ignored, and in some states parents can lose custody of their children.
In order to improve the reporting system so that the students who are bullying queer students are being held accountable.
Okay, again, persons who are bullying other students are held accountable. What's the definition of bullying? Is it misgendering? Because usually it is. In Wisconsin, there was a case where 7th grade and 8th grade boys misgendered a girl who identified as non-binary, and they were brought up on Title IX charges for bullying. And luckily, because of the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty, though any further action was thwarted and the boys were fine, but it was extremely intense situation where the boys were accused of bullying and were facing harassment charges and Title IX complaints, formal Title IX complaints, simply for the bullying act of not using they, them pronouns. So make sure when you hear things, because no one supports bullying. No one does. No one wants any kid to be bullied like in a way that is actual bullying, which name called, taunted, physical harm. But the definition of bullying for an activist could be, you're not affirming my identity, and that's bullying.
Teacher training for teachers to be better allies.
Teacher training so that teachers can be better allies. Teacher training so that teachers can be better allies. The kids are going to school the adults on how to be better allies. That doesn't sound like Maoism. That doesn't sound like color revolution. That doesn't sound like the totalitarian youth movements of the worst dictators of the 20th century. I don't know what does. These kids are saying, we're going to run the school. We're going to tell the staff what to do. Lots of times we talk about the staff, the woke staff members. What we don't talk about, there are very few of them. They are the ones that tend to bully all of the rest of the teachers and staff who just want to do their job, do it well, and go home. On top of it, you've got now kids bullying the staff members. Oh, you didn't affirm me? Well, that's bullying. And now you need to go through a struggle session, and you need to be trained to be better allies. And we're going to tell on you. I could not even imagine working in an environment like that.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, thank you. That's like a really diverse scope of work from you and Christy. A lot of like different types of work are happening in your GSAs in order to support the diverse needs of students. Next, let's hear from Amanda.
I totally agree that like trying to meet the needs of a lot of different students is like the most important thing. So
Do they try to meet the needs of Christian students? Do they try to meet the needs of Jewish students? Do they try to meet the needs of students who want to form, let's say they want to form a high school Republican club or start a Turning Point action group in their school? Do they want to meet their needs?
my GSA is mostly discussion based. We talk a lot about like current events in order to like heal and process things together. And my school is pretty diverse. So one of the things I love about my GSA is that since we all come from a different walk of life, we're able to not just educate people outside of the GSA, but educate each other and foster an understanding of intersectionality in our group. Just today, all of our meetings this month are about racial justice. And today we talked about decolonization and reparations.
Oh my goodness. Where to begin here? Where to begin? You just heard what she said. First, she used the word intersectionality. Like, so how my school, we're very diverse. We see all of these diverse identities intersectionality. So she's using a term rooted in critical race theory and critical theory. And then she says that this month we're going to focus on racial justice. We're doing this activism. We're coordinating. We're working together. We're doing it. These GSA clubs are political clubs. They are political. They are woke. They are ideological, and they are about radicalizing young kids in public schools. You are inviting in radical activists to come in and on our dime, in buildings our taxes built, using our money, they are radicalizing our children. And the children that they can't radicalize are being bullied into submission, as well as staff members. They are turning children into little Mao red, the little Mao red army. I would not be surprised if they don't hand out the little red book to all the kids and call them comrade. Kids go to schools to be educated, not indoctrinated into a destructive ideological worldview. They are not foot soldiers for social justice. They are kids. Too many parents just don't understand what education has become. And public education isn't about teaching kids anymore simply addition and subtraction and phonics. It is about teaching kids ideas that most parents would not agree with. Curriculum and culture are intentionally priming children to become radicals. They are developing a Marxist ideological framework that is embedded. It's embedded into the culture of these public school systems. And they're not only teaching kids these radical new ideas, they're teaching them how to respond to those ideas, how to act, how to be outraged, what to care about, what to not care about, how to feel, what that looks like. You cannot simply deprogram your child from this over dinner. It is like an indoctrination camp. These GSA clubs you can't just deprogram your kid after hours and hours of this every day. it will take intentionality, it'll take time and unplugging, removing your kids from environments like this. This is very cult-like behavior. When you watch, and I'll go back to when you watch these kids, it is reminiscent of a cult, isn't it? That these kids have been brainwashed. They're so young they're talking like Marxist professors, and they're teenagers because they have been groomed by Marxists. You cannot live in denial. That's kind of why I'm trying to, you have to understand what's happening. And while your teenager most likely is like not, I mean, it's not like these GSA clubs are huge, they're small. But we put them in an elementary school with colorful, bright rainbows, hearts. We're going to have candy. We'll meet at lunch. Your parents never need to know. Maybe your kid has a friend who's in it. And hey, can you be my ally? They come in and everyone's nice and they have these videos. That's how it will start. And then, hey, did your parents ever tell you about all the different identities? No? Oh, well, I'm a trusted adult. You can trust me. You can talk to me about the things you can't talk with your mom and dad, those old fuddy-duddies who don't even know about like all these cool new identities, you know. They're just, you know, they're not with it. But me, the trusted adult, well, come sit by me and you can spill your secrets and we'll keep this. You can come up with a new name and we won't tell your parents. Some new pronouns, we won't tell your parents. Just fill out this little gender support plan and we'll keep it all a nice secret from mom and dad. Most kids won't fall for that, but the ones that do are vulnerable. Again, it targets the most vulnerable. Most kids will have a healthy enough relationship with their parents and a healthy enough self-esteem that they'll get creeped out and like, that's weird. But the ones that are vulnerable and fall prey to this manipulation, this indoctrination, this brainwashing, that's what I find most offensive, that it preys on the most vulnerable kids. And it is brainwashing. It is brainwashing. So let's go back to watching the struggle session. Sorry, just 1 second.
And what that means to us as a group. So stuff like that. We also share a lot of resources for how we can take care of our mental health and how we can be activists outside of the GSA itself. So like taking what we learn in GSA and applying it outside.
I hate to stop again so soon, but yes, did you hear that? We learn how to be activists. And we learn how to be activists outside of school.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I think that expanding the work that your GSA does into your broader community, whether
expanding the work your GSA does into the broader community,
that's the community in your school or outside of your school, is a really great way to have a greater impact, not just on the students who are in your GSA, but also all of the students around you who may not have a lot of access to education about, you know, about LGBTQ plus issues or about racial justice or disability justice or any of these different things. Mary.
Yeah, like Amanda mentioned, our GSA is definitely more discussion based. It's more of like a social platform for just students to hang out and chat. But also we do a lot of bulletin boards, posters, like kind of more on an artistic side to kind of describe. We actually did a Zen library, which we did queer liberation and queer history, and then we presented it in the library so students can be like authentic to themselves, share their own.
They did a presentation on queer liberation and queer activism in the school library, which means kids that were not in the GSA club were the audience. So again, what they do in the GSA club does not stay in the GSA club. That is the point. The point is they are supposed to spread and evangelize the good woke news. This is religious. These kids are becoming, they are being indoctrinated and brainwashed into this cult-like religion that they are supposed to share and spread. Except this, there is no salvation. There is only perpetual struggle. And that's Marxism, folks. That's Marxism.
Experiences, but also share something that they were interested in, and just like a little piece of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question. Sorry, I lost my window. I always do this when I have multiple windows open and I can't find the questions. The next question is, how do you engage with political issues in your GSA? Do you engage in direct action, send letters, provide a healing space, or something else? And this time, let's start with Ollie.
Hi. So our main forms of engagement, a lot of it I discussed before. We also we do a lot of educational efforts. Like we've set up like booths, for example, for I think No Name Calling Week, to kind of like educate the broader school public about the importance of like respectful pronoun usage, use of like posters and stuff, with a combination of direct action. So negotiating directly with higher administration, protests, as in like walkouts, etc.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Amanda.
So part of the thing with GSAs is that a lot of times it'll be the first like queer space that a student enters. So not everyone is necessarily comfortable with like big acts of protest, stuff like that. So generally we just try to do what the group feels the most comfortable with, and a lot of that has to do with having a healing space and like learning about ways to engage in advocacy outside of our GSA time so that we can like learn together and then take that outside. We also like have events that the GSA puts on. We had a professional development recently, not super recently, like last year, but it feels recently to me, which was like really great. So
they had a professional development. Again, that's for staff. They were providing professional development to staff, the kids in the GSA club.
Yeah, it's mostly like healing and processing / like how can we like we're very like solution based as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that having kind of a multi-tiered approach is really important when you're working with a really diverse group of students. Not everyone in a school population is coming from the same background. They don't have the same life experiences. They don't share the same identities. So it's really important to find ways to ensure that you're being inclusive of all of those different identities and experiences within a GSA. How about you, Christy?
We've done all of these, but one of a couple of specific things we've done, my GSA members wrote a proposal to our principal regarding bathrooms and trying to, I like that part about thinking about like trying to find places for all of our students to have a role, and that could look different for all of them. And so some students wanted to actually present the proposal, and then others just wanted to be researchers or writers or people just that are preparing it and working together as a group. So we have written proposals. We've gone through training on how to talk to our legislators and how to write letters or emails. And then we're actually getting ready to take a group to our state capitol so that we can actually do meetings with them and then be part of that process. So we try and kind of provide those spaces for any students who would like to join us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's wonderful that you're going to the Capitol. I remember being like a baby activist, you know, my first times being in state buildings of any kind. I got to visit Congress one time, which was super cool, not through a GSA, but through other advocacy work. So I think that presenting those opportunities to students who, again, come from different backgrounds, might not know how to get access to a legislative body or anything like that, is really wonderful. So our next question comes from one of our registrants, and they had asked, how do you get your GSA members involved in fighting for queer issues? Because I think a lot of times it really can be kind of intimidating to go into activism. You don't know how it's going to be perceived by other people. You don't know if you might get bullied or ostracized because of it. And so I'm curious about the ways that you create pathways to make it easier for members to be involved in fighting for these issues. So let's start with Amanda.
You know, like I said, people have different comfort levels. So generally, I think it would be it's good advice to just do what the group is comfortable with, but also what your community needs. So what we've done in the past, and also another thing is that members of a GSA are often really, really passionate about fighting for queer issues, but they maybe just don't know where to start. So as a GSA leadership person, your main goal should just be to figure out like what can we do with our collective power. What we've done is we've had our professional development, we got our unisex bathrooms open. It can be something, you know, huge, it can be something really small, but as long as the students in the GSA feel like they're making change, you are making change, and you're empowering young leaders to, you know, keep it going.
Muted. Let's hear from Ollie next.
I have found that students are very food motivated. Students will do anything if you give them, no, I'm only partially kidding. Definitely, like Amanda and Christy have said, that a lot of kids are initially unsure about, or they have a lot of aspirations in terms of what they want to do and what they want to achieve as a part of a GSA, but don't quite know how to do it in execution. So definitely having competent leaders who can arrange for these events and then assigning roles from there is helpful. Like when we were doing some advocacy for No Name Calling Week, it was like the president and the sponsor who came up with the idea for posters, and then students who wanted to contribute but may have not been able to come up with that idea in the first place because they didn't quite know exactly what to do. They can help with posters and coming up with slogans and stuff, and that's how they gain that experience. We also make sure that when we plan to have like some kind of event or program, we try to prepare them a few weeks in advance, so that no matter what, especially if it's a kid's first experience with activism or like participating in activism as a queer person, that it's always going to be intimidating no matter what you tell them. So making sure that they have ample time for questions and reassurances is also as always super helpful when they can work with their schedule. And to be honest, like offering food, candy, merch, it helps a lot.
For sure. I remember one time in my GSA, some like a local restaurant like donated some pizza, and we had like
Yeah, offering food, candy, and merch to entice people helps a lot.
60 people show up to the GSA meeting. Next week we didn't have food, maybe 10 people. So food is
allies like appear and then disappear, you know, in thin air whenever there's food, you know.
I also appear and disappear if there's food versus not food, so I kind of get it. But
Me too.
definitely agree that food is a really powerful motivator. And you can even do like a little snack potluck. You can ask, you know, maybe say 3 students every week are going to bring in a snack, and, you know, it can be a bag of chips or like store-bought cookies or I don't know, soup. I don't know what other snacks are.
We have a little prize box for when students do good. We reward them because Listen, who is so wonderful and kind, has given me a bunch of Listen merch that I get to now hand out to students. So we're all 5-year-olds here.
Yes. Yeah. Incentivization.
Glisten merch that they can hand out to students. Glisten merch that they can hand out to students.
Is really important for getting people involved. Christy.
I just love all of your ideas. I mean, for my kids, for my GSA members,
There's the adult mentor.
you know, I think it's really important as a sponsor to provide just a safe, comfortable avenue for any student who might want to really take up that fight. But also I kind of, you know, I want to also protect them and try to make sure that they're put into safe places. And so, for example, we fought back against our school board, not our school board, but like having a chance to speak at our school board against some community members who were also speaking. And some of my GSA members did not feel comfortable like speaking at the board.
So they're trying to get kids, and I've seen this many times, they're activizing kids and preparing them to go before school boards. So Moms for Liberty members, you know, you go into the school board room and then they bring in the kids to talk. Here's where they're trained so that they can go in and recite that speech that, you know, they most likely did not write themselves.
Meetings, but they wanted to write. They wanted their message to be heard. So we found other people to read their messages out loud at the school board meeting. And so
seen this too.
Just trying to be creative and finding different avenues for students who want to be involved, but maybe are unsure at different points, you know, in their lives. So I think just providing a lot of different ways for them to showcase their leadership is important. We also had a chance for them to write a grant to get books, LGBTQ+ books.
Listen to this. The kids write grants to get LGBTQIA+ books. All right? Did you hear that? The kids, this staff member helps the kids to write grants, federal grants, grants for federal dollars, grants, or maybe they're writing, there's also nonprofits that will have grant programs and they'll give the free books. Here's the thing, here's the kicker. Let's say Glisten is providing free books. Write us a proposal. We'll send you boxes of LGBTQIA+ books that are highly sexual in nature, that include concepts about gender identity that the vast majority of parents don't agree with, books that are laden with a political activist message, and they win their grant, they get the books. The teachers don't even have to report them in a FOIA request because they're not part of the curriculum. They're just books in the classroom. They're just books in the school library. They're just books that we might read during circle time. They're not part of the curriculum. And then Glisten writes its own grant to the federal government to get compensated for said free books. And they get reimbursed because they were engaging in some various DEI program. ESSER funds funded a lot of this stuff, guys. ESSER funds funded drag queen shows in Wisconsin, books, professional development, all sorts of things that had nothing to do with keeping schools open, COVID prevention, none of that. Those ESSER funds became, in my opinion, a free-for-all for activists.
For our book bus. And so having them be involved in something in the background to see that.
Book bus.
That I think is also part of advocacy. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope that for our audience, all of these different approaches to getting students involved give you some ideas to think about.
Oh, yes. I hope all in the audience have some ideas to think about
implementing in your GSA. You know, whether it's maybe there's a food day one day, and then another time it's a letter writing campaign where
a letter writing campaign to who?
Students can, you know, write anonymous letters to their representatives or
to their representatives. So they're engaging in political activity. Oh, let's have a fun day of pizza, and we'll just write some letters to Senator Ron Johnson demanding that he do such and such.
Or something. There are a lot of really diverse ways that students can.
A lot of really diverse ways that we can use federal tax dollars and utilize the spaces of our public schools to turn your child into Marxist activists.
Be involved in activism and advocacy in their school or their broader community through a GSA. So next, I'm going to let Christy start this one off. Our next question is, what traits make a good GSA advisor? And what advice would you give to folks who are currently in the process of finding an advisor?
I think you just have to be, patient, but you also have to be very open, and then also like tenacious, like just putting, you know, like as an advisor, you don't have to do it all the time, but you will be have those moments where you do need to put yourself out there and stick up for your students and do what's right for them and help them and guide them. And so I think it's important to build relationships with the current principal of your building as a sponsor. I think that's really important to have that positive relationship with them. I think you also need to network, get out there, talk to other teachers, talk to other principals,
network, build relationships, spread it.
Superintendent, the community members, and really try to provide a really good base to support your GSA and to support your members. I think that's just one of the best things you can do as a sponsor, is try to create that community for them. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that having a strong GSA advisor who will really like advocate for you and, you know, figure out how to work with school administration and help with logistics and things like that is super important to having a successful GSA. Throughout my time in high school, I had 5 different GSA advisors, and some of them were fantastic and some of them were less fantastic. And there definitely was a difference in the culture of the club depending on kind of the amount of dedication coming from an advisor. So now we'll hear from the students about what they.
If you notice, I had to put on my fight hat because I'm getting a little upset and realizing all that we have to fight back against in our schools. I needed a little extra armor.
They think makes a good GSA advisor as well. And we'll start with Lucia.
Yeah, I will say during my time as a GSA president, and I'm not currently in a GSA, but I was throughout all of high school. And during my time as a GSA president, I will say that the greatest thing that I found with my GSA advisor was that he was someone who would really go to bat for you. Depending on how accepting your school is and how accepting your school administration is, it might be easier or harder for you to run your GSA. And if you have an administration who may not be 100% on board with you and might give you some pushback, it's important to have a teacher who will not quit being sort of a thorn in the side of your less tolerant administration. So someone who will continue to fight for you is really important. So someone who is invested in the GSA and not just
Someone who will continue to agitate, who will continue to push.
like a classroom for you to meet in. I think that it's really important that GSA advisors are really passionate about the work. I was lucky enough that my GSA advisor actually happened to be the only out gay teacher at my school. So we were lucky that we had someone who was within the community. That's not always going to be a possibility, and it doesn't necessarily make you better or worse, but it was something I was grateful to have.
Absolutely. And I think that there's also a sense of mentorship that happens between GSA students and the GSA advisor. So especially if you can find an advisor who's been involved in the LGBTQ plus community for a long time, who's engaged in advocacy, maybe even with other issues or something, having that person who has lived experience working in various communities and advocating for people's rights can make a huge difference for students, and for just letting them know that there are adults out there who can support them, who have done this work, and that it gives students someone to look up to and really get a lot of like advice from. So next, let's hear from Mary.
Yeah, so like Christy mentioned, I think patience is like a very great quality or characteristic to have, but not only towards the students, but also towards themselves, because typically GSA advisors are very passionate about what they do and they have this set goal for themselves. But having patience for themselves to work with the students and also allowing progress and small goals and benchmark meets, I think that's like a really good way to think about it. And definitely having this positive mindset thinking, like being very caring, reaching out to students, always being there for them. And I think it's also a like both way relationship. Students should also be very caring about advisors, like understand sometimes there are bad days, there are good days, but it's like both. It's like double relationship, kind of like both ways.
For sure. And I think that, you know, through my many GSA advisors that I had in high school, something that I learned is that it's also important to find an advisor who has the capacity to be an advisor. There might be someone who's really passionate, who really cares about the community, who wants the club to succeed, but maybe, you know, they're teaching a full class schedule and have a lot of work to grade and are working a second job, or, you know, whatever might be going on in their life. And that person may not be the ideal advisor. They could be, you know, a supportive staff member who comes to GSA meetings when they can. But it's important to have an advisor that you can rely on to stay on top of things if you need them to communicate with parents or administration or something like that. Because I think that, you know, it's not fair to the club, and it's not fair to the advisor themselves if they don't have the capacity to take on this like extracurricular activity. So next, let's hear from Amanda.
I am blessed to have some of the best GSA advisors I think exist in the world. They seriously are just amazing. I think it's really helpful to have someone who is semi like involved with the community and like has relationships around the school. That is super helpful. And I think something that's really important is a GSA advisor who understands that a GSA is supposed to be you know, led by students for the benefit of the students. I think some GSA advisors are very, very passionate, but sometimes they get caught up in trying to maybe do everything themselves. And while that might be super helpful, it's not necessarily building leadership. So I would say that, and also definitely someone who's like very passionate about those issues. And they don't necessarily have to be like a member of the LGBTQ community. I think that that's kind of like a stereotype, I guess, that a GSA advisor should be part of it. One of my GSA advisors is one of like, again, best person I've ever met. So helpful. She is not a member of the community, but her kids are. So just someone that has like stake in the stuff that we're doing is really important, but also someone who's can like kind of sit back and advise, but not like do everything themselves.
Absolutely. And it's important that the advisor has trust in their students to know that, students are very capable of learning and of doing advocacy and of, of facilitating meetings and everything. And that the GSA advisor is really there to support student leadership and student advocacy. So that's definitely a really important point to keep in mind. And that's a question that you can ask as you're looking for a potential GSA advisor. You can say, hey, we really want this to be a student-led and student-centered club. In what ways do you think you can support students while still kind of taking a step back and not being at the center of everything that the GSA does? And I think it's really important to have those
that advocate and are dedicated to the cause.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for sharing your advice. And I hope that this advice is helpful both to students who are looking for an advisor and to any educators who are thinking of becoming an advisor or who are already advisors. I think there's always ways that we can incorporate different feedback and different approaches into the way that either you're advising a club or the way that your interactions with your club advisor are. That was a weird sentence, but hopefully that made sense. We'll go ahead and move on to the next question. We're a little over halfway through our time now. So our next question is, what advice do you have for new advisors who are starting or restarting GSAs in their schools? And we'll start with Mary.
Yeah, so for me, like, I guess the biggest advice is don't let the number of students attending the meetings or the club affect you. People come and go, students, sometimes there's meetings that you have a lot of students and you get super happy and excited for the next meeting, and then the next meeting there's barely any students, and that is very normal and common. And the purpose of GSA is not how many students attend the meetings, it's not how many students who join the club, it's more of providing the space.
Something that you can control, but it also helps you build advocacy skills to figure out pathways to deal with that resistance. How can you push back against your administration? Can you get parents involved who are supportive, who want to like whatever? And then the principal who came after her decided that like we weren't allowed to have any rainbows up in the school. She just like straight up banned rainbows. And so
I'm going to rewind this because it was getting kind of long, but this looked like there was something interesting here that was missed. So let's go back a little.
With the club affect you. People come and go, students, sometimes there's meetings that you have a lot of students and you get super happy. And
again, we are watching a Zoom GSA panel. This is a video on YouTube, but it was a direct link from GSA resources on GLSEN, GLSEN. GLSEN is an organization that provides the resources, tools to school districts and to state education departments. So for various things. This is regarding a Gender Sexuality Alliance club, GSA clubs are rainbow clubs, belonging clubs, pride clubs. These are going to be they're supposed to be an after school group. What we've discovered though, in various districts in Wisconsin, including Sheboygan and Milwaukee and all over the country, are that in California, that these clubs are often held at lunchtime, particularly in elementary schools and middle schools. They are not after school clubs. They are clubs that take place during school. They'll take place over recess and lunch because it's harder to keep kids after school at the elementary school age. And because parents will often not want their kids to participate in these clubs, I believe, it is my opinion, and I believe that that's an opinion based on a lot of facts and videos and documents that I have read and flyers and pamphlets, that it is intentional to hold these over lunch and preferred over lunch and recess, because then parents and guardians don't know what's happening. And, doesn't matter. Parents aren't lining up to have their kids join a Gender Sexuality Alliance club. They're just not. Their spidey senses go off, and rightfully so. So this is a video that involves leaders of GSA clubs throughout the country. It's small. It's a small video, small group, and there's an advisor in this group. But having been someone who watches a lot of professional development, has watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of videos like this, you can take what's happening here and this is what's happening in every state. I've seen many. There's another video, if there's time, that I'm going to show that's part of a GSA training of staff members, and that's really interesting. But I think it's important to watch these kids. Now, this was February 2023. Things have not changed that much as far as the community. What has changed is we have a new president that is no longer is trying very hard to not fund these programs, to starve these organizations of federal funding, taxpayer dollars. And so that doesn't mean that this stops. They can receive private funding, and a lot of federal judges are trying to make sure that the gravy train continues, and teachers unions, because it's a small world in education, and the grift goes from state departments of education to teachers unions to federal government, state, local. It's all intertwined.
Excited for the next meeting, and then the next meeting there's barely any students, and that is very normal and common. And the purpose of GSA is not how many students attend the meetings, it's not how many students who join the club. It's more of providing the space. The existence of GSA in the school itself, it's so meaningful and purposeful already. So don't have that number affect you, and know your rights in school, know your resources, reach out when you need to. Like we mentioned before, maintain great relationship with the school administrator, especially the principal. They come in very handy sometimes. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the degree of supportiveness of one's school administration can make a really big difference in what your club is able to do, and just your overall like well-being as a club. I went through a couple of different principals throughout my time in high school, and I had one that was really supportive, and we could like basically do whatever we wanted. If we wanted to throw a pride parade in the middle of lunch or something, she would have been like, sure, fine, whatever. And then the principal who came after her decided that like we weren't allowed to have any rainbows up in the school. She just like straight up banned rainbows. And so sometimes, you know, it's great to have a good relationship with your school administration if you can, but I also think it's important to know that if your school administration is resistant, it's not your fault. It's not always something that you can control, but it also helps you build advocacy skills to figure out pathways to deal with that resistance. How can you push back against your administration? Can you get parents involved who are supportive, who want to like come talk to your principal or whoever's in charge of club activities? Can you get other students to sign a petition or something if your school administration is being resistant? So I think that often the administration can seem like this like really scary body who's only there for disciplinary action or whatever. But I think that they can either be a really fantastic resource, or they can be a barrier to success in your club, and you just have to figure out the best ways for you to navigate that. And I will pass it over to Amanda.
I can't like speak much to this because I did not start my GSA, and my GSA was pretty active even through COVID. But I would say the most important thing is to not get dejected or upset if things don't work out, because at the end of the day, GSAs save lives, and they do a lot of great work to undo systemic oppression of students, and they're just
I mean, do you see, again, this scroll, Amanda, GSAs save lives, and they do the work to help those that suffered under systemic oppression. She's all the buzzwords.
so important. So
And notice she's a young white girl. And this mind virus particularly, you know, think about it, and she's using, you could see her pronouns are she, her. So seems to be an ally, which means she is somebody that probably suffering under the burden of guilt. I am a white, cisgender, female of privilege, and I will be an ally and a savior of all of those who've been systemically oppressed in this intersection of white supremacy, blah, blah, blah. Like she has been brainwashed and made to feel guilty, and now she is atoning for the sin of her ancestors. And I'm saying all this to try to get you to understand how this happens. Like how does a child go from normal, happy, healthy to radical left-wing Marxist activists?
if it's not like picture perfect, it's okay. Just like keep going, because it is so important that there are GSAs available to students who need them.
It is so important for, you know, future white saviors to go save the oppressed. We have to save the victims. Again, not understanding that that language implies superiority, that it's actually like offensive language to, I'm Puerto Rican. It's offensive language to say like, oh, we're going to save you. We can save you. No, I don't want to be saved, and I don't want to be saved by you, and I'm okay. I'm doing just fine, and I need to manage my own life and figure things out. And I need to be empowered as an individual, not as a group, not as an identity, but as a person. And that the only God that I am going to pray to is not this woke fake God, but to the real one that actually, for my faith, loves me and isn't trying to perpetually punish me.
Absolutely. Thank you. Christy.
Well, I think it's really important to think that you don't have to do it all at once. That you know, as a sponsor who's been doing this for a long time, but started off with a very small club that was just kind of meeting every once in a while, to having regular meetings and activities that we're doing now, that it'll get better, to stick with it and grow it, and also to just know that your students are they're gonna be awesome, and they're gonna step up, and they're gonna be leaders, and they're gonna just have these amazing moments that where they will maybe even discover something about themselves that they didn't even know, and have opportunities to do because they're part of something bigger. And so it's just you know, to let your students lead. You know, you can help them, you can give them all the avenues and try to come up with creative ideas with them. But then at the end of the day, being able to step back and let them do their thing. So I think that's my biggest advice, especially for new GSAs.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. We'll move to Lucia.
Yeah, I will definitely agree that over my 3 years of running a GSA, as the president of a GSA, definitely people come and people go, and that's completely okay. And I will find that whenever we threw big events, like I threw a Pride Prom, we had over like 150 students. And the most members we ever got to attend a regular club meeting was like maybe 30. So events will bring people in, and more people than you even imagined were even interested in anything related to GSAs will show up at your events. And as long as there is a club, that is a feeling of safety and a feeling of, if something happens, I know where to go. So student interest will always be there. It may not always be super apparent to you, but it is always good that there exists a GSA in any given school.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important not to take the meetings where maybe only 2 people show up. Like, don't take it personally. Maybe there was a big band practice that day that was mandatory and a bunch of your GSA members are in band. Maybe there was theater rehearsal. Like, it's almost never your fault when students don't show up to a GSA meeting. Like, people have a lot going on in their lives. And so, it's important to just like see what's happening and then keep going. And you can still strategize on how to get more members. Maybe there's like a conflict that a lot of students have every week during your GSA meeting time. And so maybe you can think about changing your meeting time if you don't have a lot of students. But at the end of the day, like, people have other things going on in their lives and they're going to choose what to prioritize. And that's something that's outside of your control. So you just have to focus on what you can control and the work and advocacy that you're able to do with the students who are present. And let's have Ali go next.
As everyone mentioned for the millionth time, don't get too upset when when club participation is low. It's nothing specific about GSA. It literally happens with every single club on school campus. A lot of kids join at the beginning, they realize that they have other commitments or that the time doesn't work out or whatever, and they attend in lesser numbers. These things happen. It's whatever. The way that I perceive it is that if even one queer student feels safer and more comfortable than they would have without the GSA, then you've done good work. And well, not that your work is done, but you deserve to feel satisfied. What was I about to say? Sorry. Make sure to if you're a little bit unsure about how to approach running a GSA exactly, GLSEN has a lot of great resources for ideas on what to do, and yet shameless self-promotion. So that's always a good place to get started. Make sure to know your rights in terms of like having a GSA, which I might bring up later. And I wanted to mention, I don't remember exactly who was talking about. Good link. I don't remember exactly who was talking about like working, or I think it might have been Onyx. Yeah, it was Onyx. With having like supporting versus non-supporting higher faculty. But I did also want to emphasize that while connections and networking is often crucial to having certain events and achieving what you want, make sure that you don't sacrifice students and their ability to participate in the GSA for like the sake of compromise and networking. One of the things that you can learn from a more resistant faculty, which is what I've experienced, is that you can get really creative and you can work with what you can. Like Onyx said, getting parents involved, because often GSAs are becoming more and more limited in power with the a lot of the states that have like the parental rights kind of
Parental rights. Notice that. Losing power because of parental rights.
Rhetoric. So getting parents involved in order to advocate for GSA, that could be a real powerful thing. Out of school events, petitions, stuff like putting up posters, education within the club, even shifting frames, like if you did a lot of advocacy before, but maybe now because you don't have the ability to do so because of school regulations, you have to shift it more to a social club, a healing space, a discussion space. There's value in that too. You just got to get creative.
Yeah, absolutely. And your club will always change throughout the years as students come in and out. You might have different advisors, different administrators, different levels of support. And so it's okay to just kind of, ride the wave and see how your club is going to change throughout your time as a member of it.
It'll always exist. It's not like this is like the knitting club or something, where there's probably only like 3 people. Sorry to anyone in the knitting club, but
as a knitter, I am a little bit offended, but
sorry, crotcheting club.
I also do that. But no, it's totally fine. Yeah. And even if your club doesn't exist for a few years, like when I started my club in high school, it had existed, but it died about like 4 years before I joined the school.
Same thing happened to me.
Yeah, so it can start up again. It can ebb and flow and change throughout the years, and that's totally okay. So I know we're getting kind of close to our time. We're gonna go to another audience question that is super related to this one. So how can you start or grow a GSA when it's difficult to maintain student interest? Do you have tips on recruiting students? And we'll start with Lucia.
I'm gonna say it again. Events. Any kind of event, any kind of thing where, and this is hard because sometimes I know as a former GSA president, it can be hard to get the funds for that kind of thing. But people love freebies. People love events with food. People love events like that are a chance to sort of dress up and have a good time. I think all gay people love a chance to try to look. So honestly, if you can get some kind of spirit day going, if you can get some kind of game with prizes, people like things to do. And that's a great way to recruit. I know also a lot of schools have sort of club rush days or like club hello days. And you can get sort of out in the quad and have like flags and stuff up, so really get attention and get people interested. Also putting out announcements over loudspeakers, if that's a thing that you're able to do. The more people that are aware of your club, the more people that will join. And I think that is a really valuable way to get student interest. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Promote yourself through every single way possible, like posters, flyers, stickers, social media, have a website, do announcements, send it out in the school email, ask teachers to promote it, like to tell their classes about it, have a stand at lunchtime if your school lets you do that, like throw events, and make sure you do take a wide approach to sharing information about your club and getting the word out there, because maybe one student like sees a sign in the third floor bathroom at some point and then they know about GSA. Like, people decide to join the club based on super random things, so you have to cast a really wide net to get as many students involved as possible. Next we'll hear from Mary.
Yeah, advertising is like definitely key. Another thing I would say is like trying to make bonds with not just advisor but like students within students. Like what sometimes we will do is that we'll like have all the cheers in a circle, and then we'll have random question and we search online for a random question and have every member share their answer or they can pass, but kind of just make this connection with each of the members and the students. And sometimes that bond also keeps students within the club, but also brings students, have their friends promoted for you instead of you having to promote yourself. And then that just kind of free form like space is also really needed too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We'll go to Amanda next.
Everything Onyx said, like posters, PA announcements, if you have like student news, get on that. Social media is really great. Get the Remind app. So important. Best app in the world. Ollie's shaking their head. They don't like Remind.
GroupMe and Remind are both good.
Yeah.
Different reasons.
How do you not like Remind, Ollie? I'm really curious now.
They're both annoying. They're required by our school so that we always have to go through this really ridiculous middleman, and no one ever checks it. There are like 100 people in our GSA group meet and like 8 kids check the post. I swear to God. I love my GSA. I promise.
Okay. Understandable. For me, it works amazing, but totally get it. Having a lot of events, also collaborate with other clubs. This month we're having a collaborative event with the film club and the African American Training Tomorrow group. To like get everyone, if you get everyone in one room and tell them about what's going on, you'll get more members. Again, teenagers are so food motivated. They will literally, if you have pizza in a classroom, they will smell it and follow you and come into the classroom. So that, what else was I gonna say? Posters are great. Have a cute poster that has a rainbow on it. I mean, I feel like me, if I see a rainbow in public, my eyes just like lock to it. So yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely like brightly colored posters are a great thing, as opposed to just like Comic Sans text on a white sheet of paper, like make it fun. You know, you can have a club art day where everyone draws different posters that you can put up around the school, or you can design them on a computer and print them out. There are a lot of different ways to make your posters like colorful and eye-catching. And if your school has a large format printer, figure out who runs that and ask if you can use it so that you can make big posters and banners. Sometimes the school will make it, you know, they'll have rules about how big your posters can be or whatever. But definitely if it's an option to have bigger posters than like a letter size sheet of paper, definitely take advantage of that. And next we'll go to Christy.
Food for sure. My kids love food. And so, but also like one way I've found out to feed everyone is also to have guest speakers. So like to have guest speakers, and then they will bring food and provide food for our meetings. And so being able to invite them, and then also trying to create some big events, like taking kids to the Capitol, being able to, we started like we worked with our local university to have a GSA leadership summit, so that our kids could come and do workshops, and then the university sponsored it. So they were able to provide money and support for it. And
so university provides funding and support to bring activists, children, and GSA Club over to their state capital, where they learn to participate in more political activism. I'm just wondering why there aren't mega clubs everywhere. Why aren't, like during the school day, mega clubs? Let's do it. Mega club, like let's meet, then the kids can write letter campaigns to Democrats demanding the abolishment of all DEI and GSA clubs in the school. And then you can have, you know, the kids go over to the Capitol and testify in support of banning drugs and surgeries for minors when it comes to gender affirming care. I'm sure that all of the personnel in these school districts would be accommodating and open to that, since you know what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If they are able to have a club in which the primary directive is to turn children into activists and get them politically activated and have them write letters to congressmen and take them off to the Capitol, funded by the local university, so that they can go engage in political activism with partisans. I guarantee you these kids are all meeting with Democrats and in whatever capital that they are going to. Why can there not be a turning point group doing the exact same thing? And why isn't there one? And I think if these groups are going to continue, then I think conservatives need to start doing the same thing. Get a group together and demand that your group and the children in it, the students in it, are able to do all of the things that these GSA groups do. I think that might be a way that you stop the GSA club groups, when finally other organizations are allowed to come in and do the same thing that they are allowed to do. It's ridiculous. You can't say separation of church and state and then allow this religion to run the entire school district.
To feed us that day and provide the rooms. And so trying to have some big events where all students can come and participate in those, and to miss a day of school to go participate in something is also a way that I've found to have a lot of kids join us. So,
hey kids, you get to miss school if you come and hang out with a bunch of woke left-wing activists and go to the Capitol and engage in activism with us. Isn't that great? And that's awesome, right? Aren't you happy about that? Right? Good news. GSA Club, you get to skip class. It's wonderful. It's shocking.
Yeah, awesome. That's really cool having like a leadership summit or, other kinds of like big events, especially if you get to miss school for them. I remember when I was in high school, I went to this like parent teacher association like day of action. I wasn't involved in the PTA, but I got to miss school. So, I went and it was a great experience. We went to the Capitol, did some tours and stuff. So definitely having opportunities like that is really great. Next we'll go to Amanda. Did you already talk on this question? I was trying to keep track and then I didn't.
I think I did.
Okay, cool. Ollie.
Hello. In another act of shameless self-promotion, since a lot of people have mentioned before, always have events, Listen has a really helpful yearly calendar with a bunch of like relevant like holidays and events. So we'll usually do something around some of the aforementioned dates, which keeps students engaged because there's something always a little bit different. If your GSA like me, both functions as a social space and as an advocacy space, make sure to like alternate between the two of them. So like you can do one thing preparing for some kind of event, and then the next week have like a social club where they just get the opportunity to talk, so that so you maintain attendance from kids with either or both interests. When you're holding events, always remember that they don't necessarily have to be events that appeal just to queer students. I mean, I know that's obvious, but like, for example, we specifically had public forums where a lot, or like the broader student population, was specifically invited to come and discuss queer issues with queer students. We also had like family dinners, which wasn't even really specifically a queer thing. It was just students got the opportunity to basically like use the kitchen.
Oh yes, your kids will get the opportunity to hear from GSAs about queer activism. They get that opportunity. Again, they want to evangelize, they want to recruit, they want to grow. You can see with this club, this is, they want to increase their membership, increase their donor base, increase the activists, get more political power, get funding from state and federal government. So yeah, it's a lot about ideas, but it's about money. It's about power. It's about growth. Like any private business wants to continue to grow their profit, this group wants to grow its profit too. And the way to do that is to recruit, to evangelize, to get more activists, and more activists to bully other people into compliance. You have to understand that.
For the culinary arts class, we made like spaghetti and cookies, and then we all sat around and ate together. It was just something fun. Wasn't necessarily only like tangentially related to GSA, but that's a good way to get kids in who are allies but don't necessarily have like an opening that they want to approach to join GSA, or people who are in for free food because they might have a change of heart, or they might know kids who are not just in it for free food. So
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you all so much for sharing that advice. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of our questions because we're getting close to running out of time, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time and schedules. So we're going to skip down to our last question, which is, do you have any advice for folks who are interested in starting or joining a GSA? And we'll start with Christy.
For me, I think it's just so important to know that these students deserve one, they need one. So any way that you can get a club started, it's just going to be necessary. And so definitely looking at your district policies and ways that they already allow clubs, because if there are clubs allowed, then you should be able to have your club. And so you just need to look at those policies and go through that process and start talking to admin and just getting it going. So
absolutely, thank you. We'll go to Mary.
Yeah, so I say for like starting a club, the hardest part is definitely to start the club. So once you get that done, you have that courage to do it. The courage to start the club is the hardest part. But once you have that done and you went through the process, you got approved, everything else is more of just figuring out and then finding your own pace and then finding your right fit. And if you're someone who's thinking of joining a GSA, please do. Like, it is super rewarding for the presidents or leadership of GSAs to see new faces, people coming in, and the advisors just feel really rewarding. And then it would just be a really good support of your community.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next, we'll do Amanda.
I would just say stay determined, stay on that grind, because having a GSA could save a student's life, and it probably will, and it will improve the school's climate, and it'll be so, so important. But also know that you can't take on everything. If you are in an extremely homophobic and transphobic school, you are not going to be able to fix that all by yourself. Learn to work with other people, learn to delegate responsibilities. This is something I've gone through. When I started being a GSA president, I was like, okay, I have to fix my school all by myself. That is not going to happen. You need to learn to work with other people, and you have to learn to network and trust other people. And just know that by having a GSA, you're going to build your own leadership, and more importantly, you're going to build a leadership and understanding of other people. So just like, my advice is just do it. It will be so great and it'll change the world. Just do it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then we'll have Ollie.
This is more specifically for kids who are in states like Florida, where they have Don't Say Gay or like equivalent bills that may make you and the school nervous about the future of the GSA. Know your rights. Equal Access Act of 1984. If they have any other non-academic club, they have to let you have the GSA. And you're supposed to have equal access to resources. So if like the knitting club or the anime club or something stupid, well, not stupid, but it's something like that, they have access, for example, like the intercoms. They also have to let you use the intercoms. Definitely be aware of what you're getting into in that regard, so that you know what you're allowed to do and you know the parameters, so that you're less likely to back down, even if you have more wiggle room than you might have possibly anticipated. You know, the kid, like Amanda mentioned, like Christy mentioned, the kids need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing your rights is super important, especially if you're facing resistance from your school. You can say, you know, well, here's this law and I'm going to call the ACLU if you don't follow it. And most schools don't want a lawsuit. And
yes, the ACLU even has a format for like a letter that you can send to the superintendent or your principal or whatever that presents the argument, hey, this is the law, you legally need to allow us to have a GSA. If not, we're going to be taking further action. You know, a lot of these laws don't actually restrict as many rights as people anticipate. They're just meant to be vague and they're meant to be intimidating. So teachers and queer students scare themselves back into the closet. So don't let them allow yourself to do that.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So there are ways that you can get around resistance from your administration in a lot of different, through a lot of different mechanisms. We are 3 minutes over our time, but I wanted to say thank you all so much for joining us. And does anyone have any final thoughts they would like to share very quickly in a...
Okay, next, there's a little bit more time. So I'm going to play a DEI training seminar. DEI training seminar. This is an LGBTQIA plus DEI professional development session in which a large amount of school staff members all across my home state in Wisconsin discuss implementing Gender Sexuality Alliance clubs in elementary schools. Yes, so this is a Zoom, and it's called a brown bag lunch, elementary schools, GSA clubs, You watched this. These were primarily like high school age kids. Watch the educators. It's really, it's shocking. It's quite shocking. And I'll do the same thing. I will. This one is only 40 minutes long. And then after this, I have to go get my own kids from school, but we still have enough time for this. So let's do it. Let's watch.
I think I looked at a lot of the questions. First of all, I'm SJ, my pronouns are they, them, theirs. I looked at some of the questions and a lot of them might be answered by one document that I just used to set up my meeting. So if I can just share my screen for a little bit and show you that,
Awesome.
it might be a good starting off point. So let me work on doing that for a second and we'll see if it works. Can everybody see this document? I can see only Brian. Can you see it? Okay. All right. So this is something I started at the beginning of the year, just to say kind of, this is our weekly meetings. This is the date that we meet. This is the number of students that came, and this is what we did that day. So our GSA started this.
Again, this is a GSA club in elementary school. 5th graders, I believe that it will go 4th and 5th graders, 4th and 5th graders in an elementary school. This is her document. This is about what happened when she started the GSA club in elementary school.
This year, the first week of school, students asked to have a GSA. So that was one thing that was really good. I have been wanting to start a GSA for a while, but I think it's really important for students to be the ones to lead that and ask for it, which can also help with administration. So you're not asking for it, your students are. We set up a weekly time, so Thursdays in the art room for a half an hour.
Again, notice Thursdays in the art room during school hours. This is not an after school club. I repeat, this is not an after school club. They are doing this during school hours.
An hour, which is their recess. It's just 5th graders at this time. And then the first couple weeks we planned posters and made posters to have other people join us because only a couple students, of course, asked me, and then we wanted more kids to be in it. Basically, we brainstormed some things that they wanted the group to be, because every group might be different. So these are some of those things that they were interested in. And then we kind of went from there and started filling in the days of what we wanted to do. We came up with a mission statement. We decorated some GSA signs and flags for Trick or Trot, the GSAFE event. Had a little book study on George, talked about the coming out process, and that was kind of just a discussion. The students got really excited about doing research. So they researched things like the Stonewall Institute and LGBTQ around the world. And they actually just did that research and then came with whatever kind of presentation mode that they wanted to. Some of them came with presentations like on technology, and some did like posters. And we got together a no name calling week, which was then changed to Words Matter. So we put together a video. Yeah, so this is just kind of the overall thing. We finalized the video. For that video, that was one of the first times I had asked permission and told parents and guardians about the GSA, which was another question.
So this is the first time. Notice she had been running this club for months. And finally, she realizes because she's showing a video, she needs to ask parents permission. She didn't ask before. They were running this club. They were running it during school hours. She was not asking parents permission. Hold on. I just want to say this again. We're watching an LGBTQIA plus professional development DEI training session. They are discussing GSA clubs in elementary schools. This is in the state of Wisconsin. There are numerous educators in this Zoom call. This is from a few years ago. It's only gotten worse now, but she's discussing implementing their first GSA club in the school district in the elementary schools. She had already started this club. It was meeting in a room, I believe they said in the school library. During school hours, it looked to be about lunchtime. They were discussing all of these controversial topics, gender, sexuality, all of that, and they had not yet once asked permission from parents. The kids that attended, the parents did not know. Finally, she's going to show a video, and she seems to realize we've got to tell the parents. That's probably a school policy, and she was probably told she's going to have to finally get the parents' permission. They probably let her slide for a while, knowing that parents were going to complain, that there would be some parents asking questions. Fifth graders, 10 years old, 9 and 10 years old, sitting through with an activist, with an LGBTQI plus activist who is also a staff member, a teacher, who is having a club in which she is making kids aware of LGBTQI plus related information, stories, whatever, what have you, and not getting the parents' permission until just now. I'll continue to this point where she's like, oh, got to get parents' permission. It really is, it's really shocking to me.
Since the GSA at Randall is just during school, we have groups that meet at Randall and don't need parent permission to do that. So basically before that, they just came and I got all of their permission to ask their parents and guardians if I could.
She asked the kids permission if she could ask the parents permission. She asked the kids permission to ask the parents permission to be a part of the Gender Sexuality Alliance Club, where they were discussing a book, George. This book is about a young boy or young, I don't know, I can't remember. I think it's a young boy that believes that he's a girl. And all of this, she's doing this. If you look at the syllabus, bake sale, gallery night, human rights campaign, GSAFE, Pride Theater. This is a BLM action week. She is taking children and from other activities that they would be doing during school hours, and instead having them do a BLM action week. Talk about Pride Theater. They're going to do a video that's going to go on social media. That's the only reason why she finally has to ask parents' permission, because they're going to watch a video and they're going to do a video that they're going to put on social media. But she doesn't first ask the parents' permission. No, first she has to go ask the kids' permission to ask the parents' permission.
Even give this permission slip to say, hey, your student comes to GSA sometimes. This was that permission slip. So your child is a part of the GSA. We made this.
I mean, look at this. Look at this. I'm going to screenshot this. Look at this.
This really cool video. Is it okay if your kid is in the video? So that was one of the first parent permissions.
This is a video that is on YouTube. It's a public use. It's available for, so the information here, this is all public.
We thought of for some possible donations and a bake sale. And then, yeah, I could go through more of this, but basically then we got into some Zoom meetings and yeah. And we've also gotten together with Hamilton's GSA, which is the middle school that a lot of the Randall students will come to. So we've done a little bit of work with contacting other groups. Yeah. I'll stop right there and see like we have any thoughts or anything about that. I feel like I've been talking for a while now.
I have some thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. If you have any thoughts, put them in the comments.
SJ, can I hop in? This is Cherie. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the LGBTQIA lead for MMSD. SJ, that
The LGBTQIA plus lead for whatever school. She is the LGBTQIA plus lead.
document's awesome. A lot of people are asking if you'd be willing to share that. And I said you probably would. I just wanted to add in like a quick comment. Like, I really feel like elementary GSAs are evolving like the middle school GSAs did, you know.
The elementary GSAs are evolving just like the middle school. So they started in high school. And when parents complained then, no, this is for high school students. Like, hey, high school students are going to watch what they're going to watch. They're going to. When we complained that, hey, this is going to go down to middle school. Nope, it's not. Well, it does. They completely capture middle school. Now they're after the elementary schools. And she's basically saying the plan is proceeding just the way we had hoped.
You know, 10 years ago, when it was like, can we do this? Is this cool? And of course we can. The students are ready for it.
I mean, do you hear what she's saying? 10 years ago, people said we couldn't be done. And we're proving, yes, it can. Yes, it can.
We started doing welcoming schools district-wide, our kids would step up and want to be out for their leadership. And they have showed that they can handle it and they're ready for it. The first semblance of a GSA were our ally clubs that came in a lot of our schools.
Our ally clubs came into a lot of our elementary schools. So we had ally clubs. She's saying we had ally clubs come into the elementary schools to kickstart these GSA clubs. What the hell are the schools are like their playground, the activist playground. Our kids are just the bystanders that they want to get them into the clown show.
That are welcoming school. Sorry, my dogs are talking. So, you know, it started as these ally clubs, and then starting last school year, it was the same thing. A student asked a teacher at Lowell Elementary, Pam, are you on the call? I'm not sure if I saw Pam, but Pam stepped up and started the GSA over at Lowell.
I don't normally say this, but if you're watching this, please share this video, please, right now. Share it. Share it with as many people as you can. Folks need to see what is happening behind the scenes in schools. They need to hear it. Please share this. Let's get more people on. Share it with your school board members, your state legislators, with your congressmen. I'll do an to Secretary Linda McMahon. This is I'm honestly shocked at what I'm hearing. 6 minutes in, and I'm shocked. They're just saying they're screaming the quiet part out loud.
And it continues to ripple, and we're seeing that our students, in 4th and 5th grade and probably younger, can handle this and want to up and speak up and teach others and talk about topics around identity, and it's just beautiful. So thanks for everybody and all the work that you're doing.
I mean, what 9-year-old doesn't want to talk about topics on identity? I mean, I've had 5 children. Gee, if I had $1 for every time they wanted to talk about identity politics when they were 9, give me a break. These kids do not want to talk about topics of identity and political activism when they're 9 years old. They absolutely don't. You are creating an environment where it is all that they can talk about. And you're reading to them books that facilitate that. You are creating an environment that is purely political and based on identity. And then, oh yes, well, the kids are asking questions. Well, if you're reading "Stay Angry, Little Girl" about political activism and LGBTQI plus issues, if you're reading "My Shadow is Pink" to the little kids, if you're reading, here's another one, "Pride Puppy" to the kids, I wonder why they're asking questions. I wonder.
You're doing an MMSD around this. Brian, I don't know where you want to go from there.
Yeah, no, thank you, Cherie. And so that actually makes me think of a couple of different questions. So one is like, one was just the role of welcoming schools, or how having that as something that's been rolling out in the district. Do you think that is essential for the starting of a GSA at the elementary level, or is that just something that's been helpful in Madison, or how to navigate that if you're not doing that kind of as a district-wide initiative?
Welcoming Schools is a program from the Human Rights Campaign.
It also made me think about questions about like ally clubs as kind of a first step. And I often work with GSAs still across the state at the middle school and high school level, where educators or students are still getting pushback from administrators saying, oh, you can't have a GSA, so let's kind of do stealth, or let's do like a kind of a first step, which is either an ally or respect club.
We can't have a GSA, so we have to be stealth. He used the word stealth. Let's rewind that just a little bit and hear it again.
That if you're not doing that kind of as a district-wide initiative. It also made me think about questions about like ally clubs as kind of a first step. And I often work with GSAs still across the state at the middle school and high school level, where educators or students are still getting pushback from administrators saying, oh, you can't have a GSA, so let's kind of do stealth, or let's do.
One more time. It's just.
The starting of a GSA at the elementary level, or is that just something that's been helpful in Madison, or how to navigate that if you're not doing that kind of as a district-wide initiative? It also made me think about questions about like ally clubs as kind of a first step. And I often work with GSAs still across the state at the middle school and high school level, where educators or students are still getting pushback from administrators saying, oh, you can't have a GSA, so let's kind of do stealth, or let's
kind of do stealth. Here we go. Can't have a GSA, so let's kind of do stealth.
Do like a kind of a first step, which is either an ally or respect club, where it's like GSA except for a name.
Respect club, belonging club. We can't do a GSA club because parents will be on to us and the community will be outraged. We're going to call it a respect club. Come join our respect club, our belonging club. our Rainbow Club, not our Gender Sexuality Alliance LGBTQIA plus activism club.
So I'm curious about how that played a role. And then I think the other question I had is that somebody else had asked a question about why only 5th grade for the GSA as opposed to opening it up to maybe some of the younger grades as well. So
they're wondering why only 5th grade. We want to get them younger. And they are now. They are now.
Typical Brian J. fashion, I asked 3 questions at the same time. I don't know if anybody wanted to respond to any of those.
I can respond just really quickly to the why I do 5th grade. I wanted to see first how it went with just 5th grade since it's our first year, to see if that was sustainable for me, and to see how people would, like if students would come, and they do. We have like 20 students that come to each meeting. So because it, and also another reason is because it's my only prep time that's not my lunch time and not the students' math time. So just logistically, that's what worked during school. We are going to invite the 4th graders the last few meetings. It was going to be during their lunch time, which is the same as the 5th grade recess. So logistically, that kind of worked out. They just bring their lunch, but now obviously it's going to be more of a Zoom meeting. So our GSA right now is putting together a video that just kind of says what GSA is and what the 5th graders like about it, to then invite our 4th graders for our last few meetings of the year virtually.
Nice. I'm going to add, because when I started mine, I borrowed heavily from SJ and from other people who had done before, so thank you very much. I set mine up over lunch and lunch recess, because I'd already established that kids could come up during that time to the space where I share with kids. And most of my interest was from 4th graders initially, and so I just opened it up to 4th and 5th. We barely got it started before the coronavirus stuff hit, so we haven't been able to really.
Look at that. Look at this guy who is the head of the GSA club in some school. Wow.
Keep it going very well yet. And at our school, we have a little bit more of a problem that the kids, their background is more, I guess, less inclusive and less welcoming to LGBTQ. And so they were much more hesitant about the idea of being more widely known as being part of this group, even though they wanted to support. And that was easing up even as of like the 3rd meeting we had, as they started to become more comfortable. But we were getting around 20 4th and 5th graders at our meetings, which was very nice.
Vika, that's really helpful. I actually wanted.
It's Vika.
I'm sorry, Vika. Vika, I've only seen your name in print. I've never actually heard it pronounced, so that's awesome. So thank you. Yep, thank you. And Vika, you're working at elementary school in Madison as well, right? Yeah.
I am.
So,
I work at Alice Elementary.
Awesome. Something that you said made me realize that since I'm talking with predominantly folks that are working at the elementary level, that I'm like, oh, there might be a little bit of GSA 101 that might be helpful. And I'd be curious for SJ and Vika and other folks who are working on this, if this is true for you, but just as a either a reminder for folks or as an introduction for folks. So I'm pulling this from a resource called a GSA Advisor Handbook. Put together by GSA Network, which predominantly works with high school and middle school GSAs. But I'm curious, historically GSAs have really been both student-led as well as adult-supported. Sometimes in schools, the adults need to shoulder tap and say, hey, do you think this would be something that would be helpful to have at a school district? Other times students come up and say, hey, we want to do this. But oftentimes there's a confusion about what a GSA is. And I remember like over 10 years ago, probably 12 years ago now, when we were working with Madison schools to figure out how do we support middle school GSAs, there was a lot of just education about what GSAs do or what they don't do or what they are. And I always find this diagram really helpful. And it just reminds people that GSAs really fulfill a number of different functions, and it really is up to the It really depends on the interests of the students who are showing up or the students that you're working with. But it could be just a place to be social, you know, where people just hang out and are free to just be themselves or talk about their families or be free from like either gender stereotyping or bullying or just, you know, just a place to be with their friends. So it can be social. It can also be a place of support where they get to just talk about here's what's challenging about either being, you know, trans or non-binary, or questioning your gender or sexual orientation, or just navigating like the challenges of being a young person in school or family, or just, you know, looking for those supports, not in a therapeutic way, but in a way that just, you know, people get to come together and just support each other. We're in a supportive environment. And then the other thing that kind of area that GSAs often focus on is activism, which could be education. SJ, you talked about like learning about like LGBT topics within the club, and also participating in, I think, I forgot what you called it, Words Matter Week, and doing some education and stuff like that. So that can be a type of advocacy. So, but I think it can be helpful to remember that GSAs can be a lot of different things, but this is usually kind of where it focuses on. So anyway, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Brian, I'm wondering if we could hear from Carrie at Marquette or Pam at Lowell, because they also have really thriving elementary school GSAs. And also Jason and Laura over at Thoreau have started a club as well. So I don't know if any of you all would like to speak. I'm not forcing you to. You're doing great things.
I can start. I think the welcoming schools piece that we've had that in place for a number of years was really helpful in leading into having a GSA. It certainly helped in terms of our community kind of all being on board and kids having a certain proficiency in terms of their terminology and what our Gender Sexuality Alliance, like what that means. And it gave us kind of that school-wide, that district-wide, that community-wide support, so that, you know, it wasn't something that, like SJ said, it wasn't something like we advertised outside of school. It was something kids could come to during their lunchtime. But it, you know, meant everybody was really on board right away, and it gave us somewhere to start and gave us some great resources in doing some education. A lot of ours, both last year and this year, I think were a lot of the social piece, you know, and just being somewhere that they felt comfortable and safe and supported. And we would come at a lot of those lunch hours from and exploring their identity, you know, explaining some different ways you might identify in terms of your gender, your sexuality. And there were a lot of kids that came, I think, just because their friends had already identified themselves as, you know, non-binary or transgender, or as it was a vocabulary that everybody was starting to use, and they wanted to come there to be there with their friends and to learn more. And it was amazing to see that. Ours started out last year also with a couple kids coming to me to ask to get one started, and there were lots of great resources both from GSAFE, a number of other places, just to start seeing, okay, how do we get this started, and really letting the kids kind of take the helm in terms of what they wanted to do, and whether they, you know, they just wanted to have lunch together. We read some books, we made a buddy bench, and then this year it's been a little bit more teacher or adult directed, because we've had almost between 30 and 40 kids come up for lunch, and so I have a big classroom, but it was kind of hard to fit them all in there. But it was, you know, it was more social in that sense, but it was great. And it gave them a space to be that they felt comfortable and could ask questions or just learn more and see where they took that when they left.
Okay, and I'll chime in. I'm Jason from Thoreau, he, him, his. Our GSA started like December because some 4th and 5th graders asked for it. And then because I have no idea what I'm doing, but SJ and Cherie helped out a lot with some questions of, well, first meeting, ask them, why did you ask me to meet? Like, what do you want to do? And then I've brought in different books thinking, well, they're going to be uncomfortable, not really know what to talk about. So have a book that can lead the discussion. Sometimes we've gone through different welcoming schools lessons because our school is not a welcoming school, so most of that curriculum hasn't been seen by the kids and they really latched onto it. Right now with COVID-19 happening, we've gone just social because we're just checking in. We spent a lot of time meeting each other's pets. Cherie came and hung out on Zoom with us once, and yep, the kids have taken turns like Googling pictures of their teachers and changing their names to one day we had like 4 Miss Lauras in the meeting. I don't know. They're having fun and feeling safe is all we're doing right now, but we were just starting and now everything's on hold. So I'm glad that I have all of you here to help us figure out what do I do now? Because I barely feel like I knew what I was doing before, and now it's all on Zoom.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie, she, her at Marquette in Madison. We have facilitated our GSA for 2 years now, and each year has been different. I can echo what most folks have said in Madison in that it's been student-led. This year definitely was more educational than, and last year was more social. And it really is, I just kind of check myself and make sure that I'm following the kids' needs. And when I'm not sure that I'm doing that, I come to them and ask their needs. You know, bringing in parent support and notification is a new idea for me. And I like thinking about that because it has felt like a piece that's been missing and I wasn't really sure how to navigate that. Again, like Jason said, we are not a welcoming school, but we mostly live in the 5th grade as well. I feel like developmentally, they are more independent. They can remember to come. They have a lot of ideas that can plant some seeds, and really I feel like my role is to make it applicable in the elementary world. The resource that Brian showed earlier is how I started last year. I also shared a document, SJ, thank you. Cherie shared your plan with me earlier this year. And that's really guided. That was all student-led, what they wanted to learn. And then I would just put resources in, and Cherie and Whitney would come and help support. Yeah, I mean, they had really fun ideas that we were hoping to live out this year under different circumstances. One was they wanted to do a pride parade at school, which I was so excited about. So every year is a little different. Last year, we also took on, so the welcoming schools, we used that as a resource. And I would do some of the activities with the actual group. And then we would talk about, they really want to go into classrooms and they want to be at Marquette, they want to be a visible advocate.
Oh, I bet they really want to go into classrooms. They really want to go into classrooms. They really do. They want to go into classrooms and they want to talk about, you know, being all of the issues. They want to go in there and they want to talk about gender queer, non-binary, all of the different identities. And then they want to eventually do, like we saw in the video with the kids, let's start a letter writing campaign and write our congressmen and write our senators. Yeah, they really want to go in the classrooms. They want to get into all the classrooms, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade. They don't like that they're stuck with just the 5th graders, and they're trying to figure out, how do we get the younger kids?
So last year they went into classes and led like anti-bullying lessons in their classrooms. And
again, anti-bullying lessons aren't what you think they are. Ask her what the definition of bullying is. Misgendering is bullying. Not being welcoming or respectful of that guy there and calling him a woman. That's bullying.
For me, it was just really eye-opening of, this is a conversation that our kids want and need, whether they were part of the—
Yeah, the kids want, they want to talk about transgenderism. They just all the little kids. That's all they want to do. They want to talk about the many different sexual and gender identities and gender expressions that they can have. They want to discuss politics, and they just, because any of us who have kids know that, gosh, a normal kid wants to discuss this stuff, right? They're fooling no one but themselves.
GSA or not, you know, they're hearing homophobic slurs on the regular still, and it just opened up this authentic conversation in classrooms that really I felt the charge to keep going with it.
There's nothing authentic about the conversations that they start. It's opposite world.
So yeah, I think it's really a powerful piece in our system that needs to happen. And at times I really don't feel like I know what I'm doing either. I'm so thankful for Cherie's guidance. You know, I would hope that for all GSA advisors, but definitely the resources from it. Is it GLSEN? GLSEN. Or yeah, and GSafe. I've used those as a guide, and then those are really geared towards more secondary, but I've kind of modified them as I go. Also, there was a question about administration, and I think it's really important to have that conversation with your administration before beginning of really getting a feeling of where admin was. I'm lucky to have 110% support for my admin as far as backing me up with parents, communicating in schools, using language, being a disruptor, supporting the students. She comes to some of the meetings when possible. So I feel very grateful for that.
Thanks, Carrie. Just as a administrative note, in the chat section or comment sections, people have noted that some of the links that people have shared to documents, like we need to get permission to access those, so might need to double check those if you posted a link to a personal document. Carrie and others who talked, like Carrie, I'm glad that you brought up administration, and then Vika, you had brought up, you know, maybe working with students with some families who aren't as supportive. I'm wondering like how people have navigated, and Cherie, this might be more in your court, but how people have navigated like, or how they've supported administrators, like had that conversation with administrators, or imagine having those conversations with administrators is if they have questions or pushback, you know, making the case for here's why we need a GSA, here's, you know, what I need you to do for me or to support the students, like just trying to deal with, you know, getting skeptical administrators on board. And then, you know, the follow-up question then is, you know, how do you deal with pushback from, particularly from either parents or either parents or family or even other staff members or community members? So I guess one question is, you know, how to, you know, message this or work with administration who might be skeptical or unsure, and then also how to deal with that pushback.
Right, and to be honest with you, like we didn't have much, we haven't had pushback. Or much pushback, that is. I mean, I think it's just one of those things like our policies and like the right to be able to have clubs.
They haven't had pushback because no one knew about the clubs.
It just like anyone who would push back would be seen as like a homophobic transphobe, right? So I think we really haven't had administrators push back. I think they want to know information, they want to know the logistics. I think, you know, like, but we haven't had pushback.
Yeah, which probably is a little bit unique to Madison as far as when we're thinking about the rest of the state, right? So, or like it might come down to like individual school by school. You had mentioned giving them information. Do you know if administrators have dealt with or had to, like Carrie, you mentioned administrators being a disruptor and helping them be able to respond to questions or maybe, you know, curiosities from folks? Have you had to work with administrators to talk with parents or families about that, or is that just not needed?
So at our school, well, we're on our third principal since last spring, but so the one that came in right now just knew that this is what we do and was awesome about it. But we have pushback from families who are also just religious reasons. They push back against welcoming schools as an idea because being gay is horrible and our kids can't talk about that. So Laura, who I think she's on here someplace, our social worker, and we met with the PTO, said, we are talking about this because there was definitely confusion. And talking about, yes, GSA, we're talking about it with your kids. We talk about kids, to explain that everything that we're doing at this level, it's not like sex education. We're talking about be a nice person, love how you are, be respectful of everyone. And then we talked about, at one point in the gender snow person, you talk about, oh, the middle is who you love, and all the kids, regardless of their sexuality, just, ew, that's gross. You can't hold hands with people. Like, they're still kids. We're not talking about things that would offend families. Just had very long conversations of, these are the kinds of books you read. And we're talking about be nice and love yourself for who you are. And they kind of bought into that and stopped pushing. That's just families, not our administration.
Yeah.
And
they bought into that. They bought into that. Then he just casually throws out, we looked at the gender snow person. They bought into that. It's all about love. Oh, they bought it. They bought the lie. They bought it. Wink.
Cherie helped a lot with figuring out how to word that slightly gracefully.
Yeah, helped us word it. Yeah, so we could fool the parents. They bought it.
With the families and smoothing it over and
smoothing it over, because if we told them the truth, they push back.
Just kind of wanted to walk in and just be like, shut up, we're doing this because it's good for your kids. But
oh, now there we go. Let's there's the truth.
For who you are. And they kind of bought into that and stopped pushing. That's just families, not our administration.
Yeah.
And Cherie helped a lot with figuring out how to word that slightly gracefully with the families and smoothing it over, and just kind of wanted to walk in and just be like, shut up, we're doing this because it's good for your kids. But
I really wanted to be like, shut up, we're doing this because it's good for your kids, you bigots. That's what he wanted to say. But he smoothed it over. He talked with Cherie, helped him to calm down, so he could lie effectively.
But that's not how you should present it. That's the way to get more pushback.
So funny. Just so funny. Let's do it.
And love yourself for who you are. And they kind of bought into that and
they bought into it. They bought into the love.
That's just families, not our administration.
Yeah.
They bought into the whole love thing. Yeah, it's all about love. They bought it. But really what we want to say is, shut up, you bigots. But we didn't do that.
And Cherie helped a lot with figuring out how to word that slightly gracefully with the families and smoothing it over, and just kind of wanted to walk in and just be like, shut up, we're doing this because it's good for your kids. But
can't hear that enough. Oh, we told them it was about love and respect. The Love and Respect Club. Sure, don't show them, hide the gender snow person. What we really want to say is, shut up. Shut up. This is good for your kids, you bigots. But we didn't. We were able to put on the mask.
But that's not how you should present it. That's the way to get more pushback.
Hey, Brian J., if I can jump in, this is Jennifer, she, her. I'm the Welcoming Schools for MMSD. And I meet with a number of families, exactly with what Jason's saying. And I think some of it is just them not understanding what it is we're teaching and what we're talking about. We have to remember that when we were young, this is not something that was.
We understand. We understand what you're teaching. We know what you're talking about, and that's why we don't like it.
Or talked about it all in schools. And so people get worried about what it is that you're teaching their children, and they feel like, this is something that should be personal.
I wonder why we're worried.
And a family-led kind of thing, or based on our religion, this isn't something we agree with. And, one of the things that I always go back to is like, really what we're trying to create is a space where everybody feels comfortable and safe being who they are.
And you want that for your child, and we want that for every other child in our school. And so really, it's about respect. You don't have to agree with us, but you have to respect others. And I think that that's been like a key piece for me. And I think hearing people's stories, you know, meeting with people who are concerned face to face and really having conversations has really helped ease any of the tension and any of the pushback that we've had. And I think when we were talking a little bit about administration getting pushback from families, I did work with a principal this past year who said the parents were worried, or the family was worried, that they didn't know that their child was part of this club. And what I talked them through is the fact that, like, what would you do for any other club, right? Do we have to notify somebody that their child is coming to math club during lunch? So really just taking it back and being like, okay, this is just a club. What do we do for all of our other clubs, and how do we respond to families and for those types of situations and questions as well?
I'm going to piggyback, because that's what allowed me the freedom to say, yes, we can do this. If kids can go to basketball club at lunch, they can come to GSA at lunch. You know, it just seemed really simple to me. And I kind of, like, when I brought it up to our principal, who is a supporter, I didn't raise it as a question, can I do this? I just said, this is something that we're doing at a lunch and lunch recess. It was more of an FYI. I don't know how that plays other places, but it felt like, from what I've been hearing from others, this shouldn't be permission to do this. If other people can do clubs, we can do this club. And I took a bit of a, I don't know, I can't think of the words, sorry, that's it.
I think it's important, you know, SJ shared that permission slip because that video that they created was going to be shared publicly. So to do that, we needed to get, you know, signed permission from families. But I think it's important, even at elementary, that kids are able to show up to club and be able to do that, not have to feel like parents, family members have to, you know, sign a permission. So they're just welcome to come. You know what I mean?
They don't want to have to tell parents. They want kids to be able to do whatever they want and to consent. They want young kids to consent without parental knowledge or consent from the parents. They think that little kids can consent to talking about sex and sexual identity and gender expression and all sorts of things that are completely inappropriate for these adults, the conversations that these adults want to have with our little kids without our knowledge and consent. It's shocking, it's wrong. And there should not be GSA clubs in our schools.
I mean, you want to make sure that this club isn't outing. Sorry, my dog likes to bark on Zoom calls all the time.
Is it cash money? Is it cash
of course
money?
It's cash money.
Okay.
She just wants to be safe. Anyway, so we have to make sure that we're not outing kids who are attending these clubs.
I can speak a little bit to that. There was, I mean, I've had a student before that has a parent that's very vocally not in support of things outside of the gender binary. And so we had a discussion because this child was coming regularly to GSA meetings. And I, you know, was kind of concerned about what should happen should this, you know, they find out that this kid's been coming. We just said, you know, they have every right to be there. And this is a place they should feel safe and comfortable and welcome at all times, and just kind of made sure that everybody was on the same page that, okay, we're all aware the student is attending and a part of this. And if something comes up, then we'll deal with it then. But it was important that we have it and that they are allowed to be a part of that club.
Thank you. Somebody had mentioned earlier that, you know, just asking thinking about permissions, but somebody had mentioned earlier, like students' right, or, you know, do students have a right to start a club, whatever else have you. I do know that there's, you know, usually when I'm working with secondary schools, I talk about the Equal Access Act, which is a federal policy or federal law that requires if schools have one type of club, they have to allow all types of clubs. to form within reason, like if it's a hate group or if it's a group that's promoting underage drinking, you know, they can say no to that. Or if it's a club that promotes running around hallways with knives, they can say no to that. Which I thought was kind of funny that I just said that just now, but anyway, thanks, Sheree. But anyway, my understanding, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, but my understanding is that law applies to secondary schools, not necessarily to primary or elementary schools. So one is like, I think, you know, I think you can use the Equal Access Act as a, hey, you know, if we have other clubs or do other things for our students, this is a group that we have a legal right to form and have a responsibility to form. It might be a little bit iffy if people push that. The other thing I think about, though, is that all Wisconsin school districts should have in their non-discrimination policies protections specifically for students based on sexual orientation. And about 300 school districts in Wisconsin have protections based on gender identity as well. And oftentimes when I work with schools, you know, one of the kind of a way to frame it is, you know, we have a responsibility to protect and not discriminate against our students. And, you know, one of the ways that we can do that is having this group that provides both a space for LGBT students or students with, you know, queer and trans family members. That's one of the ways that we're, you know, like living in our non-discrimination policy or living up to our aspirations as a district. And then also, like, whenever we're doing either policy advocacy or policy change, we always say, look at your, you know, your mission statement or look at your values as a district, because you can almost always tie back, you know, having a club or doing this work or talking about these topics at the elementary level to that mission or to that either mission or values. I did have a question. Kim, are you still on, Kim Westheimer, are you still on the call? Oh, there you are. So I was thinking about, I was trying to look through the newly revised Gender Spectrum website, trying to find some old resources that I would always go to. And I'm a little bit challenged because I'm still getting familiar with the new website. But I feel like there's some good documents out there, both between you and as well as Welcoming Schools. Of course, you also played a significant role in Welcoming Schools early on before migrating over to Gender Spectrum, if I'm remembering correctly. But I'm wondering if you have like thoughts on like how to make a case for why it's appropriate to talk about these topics at the elementary level based on kind of some of your experiences, or if you can quickly get to some of those resources.
Yeah, I mean, our resources are focused more on gender than sexual orientation, but again, I think that it translates across both issues. Yeah. And we have some resources just on talking to young kids about gender and ways to frame that. And I'm happy to, while we're talking, I'll look to see if I can find that link and put it in the chat. We've dealt less with gay straight alliances, and that's one of the reasons that I joined this call, is because we've been getting questions about GSAs, and I'm kind of clueless, and so are my colleagues around that. I've done a lot of work with middle and high school GSAs and not so much around elementary school GSAs. But again, I think in terms of the conversations, part of it also is helping parents realize that kids are having these conversations anyway, and pointing to places in social media or the kind of language that kids are having, and really asking, encouraging parents to ask their kids what they're hearing. What do they know already? To realize this isn't just introducing some topic from the outside and saying, okay, kids, we're going to talk about this in this lesson plan today, but realizing this is something that's happening, that the conversations that kids are happening, and that as educators, what we're trying to do is help kids have those conversations in a way that's productive. I feel like that's just one strategy that we found helpful in general about these conversations. I'll also put in a plug for a film that was made about some work we did with an elementary school in Oakland, and it's called Gender Inclusive Schools. And it's tangentially related to this conversation because it shows educators and kids having conversations about gender, and again, seeing how much kids know already, and making it clear that this really isn't that scary of a conversation. So I'll look for some of those documents, and if I can find them on the new website, and share them. Thanks, Brian.
I would just add too that I think that there's a lot of data out there about how kids report, or what kids are reporting being bullied around and not fitting into gender stereotypes, and hearing the anti-LGBTQ slurs and all of that is something that's real and happening to them. So I think sometimes people need to hear the raw data of it. We also have in MMST now some data around
you know, the prevalence of kids in our schools that identify as LGBTQ+. So recognizing that this isn't about 1 or 2 kids, we have lots of kids who identify this way, and it's really important that we're supporting them starting at young ages, because when you look at the statistics of, you know, feeling safe and respected and like they belong and all of those you know, those narratives that we hear from students who identify as LGBTQ who've been invisibilized for so many years, that we can rewrite those narratives by talking about it at earlier ages and creating spaces where, you know, everyone is accepted for who they are.
Thanks. I was doing that. Oops. I was doing that multitasking thing where I was trying to look up for look up a resource and listening at the same time and trying to figure out where I'm at on Zoom. So I apologize. I'm just looking at questions in the chat. I saw that Tanya had asked a question about whether people felt that written parent permission is necessary for holding the club virtually, followed by Vika saying that's a good question. Our kids have been more hesitant about joining via Zoom, possibly because it outs them at home, right? So like there's the discussion about how do we do GSA at school, but then also how do we, now while we're all virtual, how do we hold those spaces and what kind of permission or not permission, or how do we try to make it accessible for students when there might be, you know, parents or family members in the background who either don't know that they're involved or might have different thoughts. Like, any thoughts on navigating that? Anyone on the call? Oh, Tanya, I think you froze up.
All right, that's the end there. So that was a live DEI session with educators in Wisconsin talking about the installation of GSA clubs and in elementary schools, so specifically elementary schools. And at that time, they were implementing them into 5th grade. Now I can tell you 100% these clubs are as young as kindergarten. I have friends who are administrators in Wisconsin schools, and they don't agree with what's happening, but they tell me that there are activists that are trying to get these clubs in as early as kindergarten. And they start off their brochures, their flyers. I'll be able to do more discussions about this, but it's happening. And now you have an inside look into what is professional development. And that was something available to the public to watch that I was able to find. And so what they're discussing, it's no different than what you see on the Glenson website. It's no different than what you would see welcoming schools, GSAFE in Wisconsin, Human Rights Campaign, Advocates for Youth Rights, the comprehensive sexuality education curricula. And I will, so right here, so Brian was in this training. So here is a slideshow. This was a slideshow that was brought into a school district, elementary school district, about having affirming elementary schools. And again, we saw what some of these slideshows can look like. I'll go back. Gender, identity, and expression. And during the professional development, one of the trainers discussed a gender identity slideshow that she had seen in Oakland. And this is, so it would be something just like this. This would be for elementary school students. What is gender? What is gender all about? These are the conversations that the GSA clubs will have with 5 to 12-year-olds. Some people identify as a boy, girl, she, her, he, him. You get to choose. Books, who am I? Books that talk about identity so that children can view themselves through the lens, the critical lens of identity. Then you had heard discussions about intersectionality. Here, are you Black? That's one identity. Gay, that's another identity. Non-binary, another identity. Or what's your gender expression? Just all these different identities in the intersection Olympics of oppression. Here, I identify as genderqueer. There are many options for gender identity. So you can see the whole slide. My gender is fluid. Sus but not cis. Proudly living outside the gender binary. Discussion of pronouns. Z, zer, zers, zer, self. C, her, hers, herself. Everyone has a choice in their pronouns. Again, more on pronouns. What does it mean to be transgender? Gender expression. And finally, GSA Sexuality Alliance Club or Rainbow Club. No permission needed for club participation. Meet other students, do some activism. Do some activism. That's the goal. Do some activism. Again, this was in California. You have the right to use the pronouns and the name that fits. They can keep a secret about your identity from your parents, blah, blah, blah. And there you go. Safe Space badge. Listen, proves that you have been through training. You have the Safe Space Toolkit, welcoming schools. Here was the grant award letter proving that in Oakland, federal funds were used to pay for all of this. Here are all the organizations. This is just an example, Wisconsin Public Education. GSAFE, who is Brian from GSAFE was moderating the conversation we watched on GSA's welcoming schools. They mentioned that a lot. Welcoming schools, part of the human rights campaign. Gender spectrum, resources for educators and for students regarding transgender identity. Amaze.org creates videos to be used in conjunction with comprehensive sexuality education and SEL lessons. The Trevor Project. The Trevor Project provides a hotline and resources for transgender, non-binary kids. This is Leadership Training Institute. So this is all about what do we do? Is this advocacy or activism? They say both. Again, all funded in our schools. Here you go. This gentleman believes that his chromosomes, he said this, I heard them say in testimony, that they might have changed to XX now. This gentleman is the subject of a coloring book that was distributed in Wisconsin public schools. And here are the kids that are affected. Pastor, I mean, this is the crowd that I see testify all the time. They come to just about every, I mean, they're paid activists, probably most of them, or they work in the space of advocacy or education. Total budget. GSA teachers, substitutes, look at this. Look at how much money. And again, gender support plan, where they put in writing they can keep secrets from parents. This was Moms for Liberty Unplugged. Do spaces like this where talk to my friends in the space of education and parental rights activism, and we'll watch school board meetings, GSA club trainings, we'll, you know, all of the things. I think that sunlight is the best disinfectant, and when you see some of the things that we see, then you understand, you know what you're up against. You also have more knowledge and awareness of what you should look for, what you should FOIA. And this was all I did to get a lot of these materials. Just go through your Department of Education website, comb through, look for keywords. One link leads to another link. Go through YouTube. They post a lot of this stuff, because it's taxpayer funded. There's not much good about it, but it has to be publicly available. So a lot of this stuff will be still in board docs on your website. There's ways to find using some sort of like, there are programs which you can find files that have been deleted. Most of the DEI stuff hasn't been disappeared just yet because they are not afraid. There was a recent ruling, I think just yesterday, where a judge was ordering that all the federal employees fired by Secretary Linda McMahon have to be rehired. I'm sure that will go through the litigation process, but they are using a weaponized judiciary to do the work that they can't get done through elections. So I hope everyone has a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll be doing a lot more of things like this. Please DM me if you have any videos of training. Someone just sent me a school board meeting that I will air if I can't get to it this weekend, next week. And we'll continue to inform and equip and educate parents, grandparents, and community members on parental rights so that they can fight. Bye, everyone.